Before we begin, I just want to say this is almost certainly going to be my last normal commentary on anything that has to do with the situation which spawned from Keyblade Master's video on Sonic King. I just wanted to address a few more arguments regarding that drama before I stopped talking about it. I also want to make note that both Kagura101 and TurnOfTheTV, also known as River, have told me they have disowned this video. Keyblade Master has not, though, to my knowledge at least. Both of Key's tryout partners also told me directly that Key never showed any signs of wanting to disown the commentary in question. Kagura also provided me screenshots between himself, Key, and River, where Key tries to encourage the two to not disown the video, so keep that in mind.
What TV do I need to use to play Metopia on the Nintendo Switch?
A television with HDMI, I assume? Your average flat screen from after 2006 should work just fine. Also, are you looking for a TV in a video game store? Don't they usually assume you have a TV given you're trying to buy a console and video games to play on said TV? I think you're going to the wrong place here is my point. I'm going to be skipping most of this intro sketch because, to be fair, it's not terrible. However, there are some things I do want to comment on real quick.
Dear pesky plumbers, or non-plumbers if you're not plumbers. If you're reading this, I've locked myself up in the—
It's no use, Captain! We burnt up too many dilithium crystals to re-record that line!
Do you think if we co-op on this, I will be back to a TV robot thing?
Only one way to find out.
For those of you who are wondering how TV's transformation is supposed to be in any way related to the co-op, well, so am I, quite frankly, and remember, I've watched the entire intro sketch while I'm showing you guys only brief segments of it. Look, I get this is supposed to be set up for a commentary, so the idea of doing a commentary being the thing that solves all of the problems is something I can suspend my disbelief to accept. However, there still has to be a reason why you'd think this would work, otherwise your characters just look like idiots. Which is not something you want your character to come off as if we're also supposed to take them seriously while doing videos that require logical thinking and the ability to intelligently address arguments. And your writing comes off as incredibly sloppy. And this is especially notable because it's such an easy fix. Don't try to connect the two plot threads. Have Kagura and River agree to put this problem to the side right now because the commentary is more important in some way. Or actually have it fucking work because, spoiler alert, it doesn't.
Wait a second. Why am I still a human? I thought doing this tryout would turn me back into a TV.
Sounds like a skill issue.
Oh, and while I'm here, I just want to note this part of the outro that immediately followed what River said.
Well, seems whoever wrote the note was either lying or just wanted to waste our time.
You mean this note?
Dear pesky plumbers, or non-plumbers if you're not plumbers. If you're reading this, I've locked myself up in the broom closet. But that's not important. Oh dear God, I'm stuck. Instead, I left this VHS with a video inside it for the sole sake of making this commentary, as I couldn't afford Wi-Fi this month. Oh dear God. So if you just so happen to be a commentator passing by the store, please cover it so I have some extra space. Also, I have no idea how to get out of here. I am actually very nervous about the freaking broom closet. Please, I need help. Oh God, for the sake of the holy and or unholy butlers.
Because if so, that note made no reference to magic. I don't get the connection here. I gotta be really honest with you.
Do you want to call this bit?
Stop right there, criminal scum! I'm not letting you commit another war crime on my watch!
You know, while you guys are discussing how Kagura's magic powers can turn River from a TV into a human, I'm more impressed that they apparently have the power to completely change locations in a handful of frames. Seriously, this is what the game store looked like before, And this is what it looks like when Key crashes his car. Notice how they look literally nothing alike.
So with everything said and done, let's dive in.
Wait, before we do that, Key, I want you to do me a favor. If I ever become a vindictive asshole again, I want you to slap me in the face.
I feel like that's something I should be saying to you.
The real vindictive assholes are the friends we made along the way.
Okay, spoiler alert, there was an obvious setup for a joke there that goes absolutely nowhere. Seriously, the first time I watched this, I thought they were going to do a bit with them slapping each other or something, but instead, no, there's just nothing. The entire concept isn't even really mentioned for the rest of the commentary.
So I was playing Sonic Unleashed this afternoon for a little bit, and then I get several Discord notifications. One of them being a notification from Sonic King showing off a response video on him by the name of Keyblade Master. My overall thoughts on Keyblade Master: I don't love his content, but I also don't hate it either. This video is actually one of the better videos on his channel, because even I'll have to admit, the amount of points on it were very fair, and even Sonic King kinda, well, quite frankly, admits his mistakes. But at least he's willing to admit it. However, the end of the video is where I officially crossed the line.
Oh, thank goodness you specified you're the one crossing the line. You had me worried that I was gonna cross the line, since there's no way I'm declaring war on Five Nights at Freddy's.
The fact that Key was making fun of X-Fred's grammar is important for context regarding the point I'm going to make. However, it and the actual thing I need to respond to are separated by this chemistry bit, which I did admittedly find pretty amusing.
Oh, and by the way, your grammar in this is a shit show.
Am I the only one that finds it amusing that Kagura's point about grammar has a grammatical issue? He begins by saying, by the way, implying that he's going to be talking about something different than what Key did, even though Key also made a point about X-Fred's bad grammar. And that's not even getting into that absolutely butchered line reading, which I had to re-listen to 4 times before I gave up and turned on subtitles. He said a shit show for those who are curious, and again did such a bad job of saying that at first I couldn't tell if he said essential or abysmal.
A response by the name of Keyblade Master. Like, I get this hard to think straight when you're not scripting. However, reading in grammar like this really shows unprofessionalism on your end.
What gave you the impression X-Fred's simply put together screen recorder on mobile video was trying to be professional? I get what you're going for. However, wouldn't it have made more sense to just say it made the video worse and not less professional, given how easy it would be for X-Freds to just respond with not applicable?
Especially when they can be fixed by retakes.
You heard it here first, folks. Retakes improve your grammar, apparently.
Though I will give IGN credit for this.
Hey Kagura, aka the editor of this video, aka the guy who just complained about X-Fred's grammar. You mind explaining to me how you confused send with sent?
Unlike a certain someone I know, they aren't trying to make a living off of harassing someone.
Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down?
I and 3 other people were being harassed. DS, the Birdman, and Shadowruff were being accused of harassing Tony Sonic.
Quick question, but where did I ever imply that you guys were harassing Tony Sonic? Since from my joke, I never said or implied that you guys harassed Tony Sonic.
Sonic King mentioned harassment. You specifically showed 4 people. And you put this text on the bottom of the screen, which was obviously alluding to Tony Sonic, given you mentioned him as somebody who's been covered to death earlier in your commentary.
Ladies and gentlemen, meet the Sonic King, a newer commentator who seems to focus primarily on covering Tony Sonic. How ironic that the guy who covers Charlie 5 to death now has people covering his videos to death. If anything, Sonic King's little jab was painting you guys out as harassers more than my joke.
Never mind, that's kind of impossible given you name-dropped those 4 specific people and Sonic King didn't.
Since he explicitly said harass, whereas I just turned the tables on him due to his poor wording.
Okay, first off, how did you turn the tables on Sonic King specifically through mentioning 4 completely unrelated people? Especially given that you're denying the potshot was specifically aimed at the anti-Tony Sonic community, which is the only way this could even tangentially be related to Sonic King. And by the way, Key, what was on those tables exactly? Thanksgiving dinner? No. An accusation of harassment. You saying you turned the tables on Sonic King doesn't actually debunk what X-Fred said.
On that note, you clearly don't realize that the potshot was literally about Sonic King vague wording.
What gave you that impression? Nothing he said so far has contradicted that, nor attempted to argue against the idea that Sonic King worded himself vaguely. X-Fred's issue begins and ends with the substance of what Key said to demonstrate that point, not the point in of itself.
Like, were you legit mad that he used your profile picture to emphasize on SK's vagueness?
Yes, he hasn't exactly been subtle about that so far, Kagura!
How? He didn't even use you and 3 others as harassment.
I mean, I'm not sure how you'd use another person as harassment, but I do have to give you this, that is a pretty solid point.
It's bad enough that fans from Tony Sonic has accused us of this already.
Where is your evidence for that? I am aware this video is unscripted, but you still did edit it, so you could have just easily provided the viewer more context as to what you claim.
But TV, what if the video itself is in the commentary, and thus meaning that giving citations isn't required?
Okay, this is another one of, I get what you're trying to do, but who the fuck says citations are only required in commentaries? Has anyone made that claim? Because I've never heard it before. Could you show some evidence that somebody said this somewhere? I mean, it is a commentary, so evidence is required.
Even if that is the case, it still wouldn't negate the fact that without any verifiable source to go off of, the audience viewing this will not take the claims stated at face value. When you're going to claim Tony Sonic's fanbase were harassing y'all, then there better be more to it than just the words said.
Okay, so let me make sure I get what just happened. River says that X-Fred should show sources to back up his claims, which I do agree with for the record. Kagura says that a possible counter-argument is that given this isn't a commentary, sources aren't required. To which River replies with, well, you still need them for the video to be taken seriously, therefore they are required for the video to be of quality. Was there a point to Kagura's counter-argument?
Also, what's the point of bringing up how you guys were harassed by Tony Sonic's fans when I would have had no knowledge of this? Given how obscure the events you're talking about are to an outsider.
In order to provide context as to why he was so bothered by what you said. Also, you can't really pull the "it's really obscure" card when you name-dropped multiple members of the anti-Tony Sonic community, showing at least some degree of familiarity with this situation. Yes, it is obscure to the general public, I'll grant you. However, you are at least aware enough of the situation to know specific names of those involved.
So really, there's no sort of correlation between my joke and you guys getting harassed by Tony Sonic's fanbase.
When did X-Freds say there was? What the fuck are you talking about? All he said was that made it worse for him because it means he's having to deal with multiple shit at once.
And you should know this because you're making a commentary type channel in the first place.
I only have issues with River's point, so I'm speeding through what both Kagura and Key say. The only real issue is some rather awkward line reading on Kagura's part. It sounds like he shouldn't have finished his sentence when he did, if that makes sense. It's a little hard to explain, but it's not that big of a deal.
If you're going to bring up how other commentators talk about the same subject too, it doesn't really work, as in some of our own cases, if we do talk about the same subject, it is much more spread out and less consistent than what you're doing here.
Okay, how much more spread out and how much less consistent? And also, who did this? And furthermore, what the fuck are you even going on about? It's funny that you just said that commentaries require sources, and yet you are not giving me any to explain your claim right here.
And you dare use that word against me like we actually do this for a living. Which, trust me, we don't. The Birdman just gives out criticism. Shadow Ruff is just a load of harmless jokes and some honest criticism, with showing clips of Ephrommentator.
So to tackle the first part of what Xfred said, since I'll leave the rest for TV and Kagura to cover, I just want to say this. If your main type of content that brings you attention is videos talking about one particular user on a constant basis, and is what attracts people to your channel, then by all means, you're making a living off of covering someone. Since that's what gives your channel views, subscribers, and most importantly, attention. Money isn't everything when it comes to the phrase making a living. It's just the variable in the phrase and not the key component. Especially when Sonic King added trying before saying making a living off of harassing someone. Meaning growing your channel through covering Tony Sonic's videos still qualifies.
Make a living, as defined by Merriam-Webster, to earn the money one needs to pay for housing, food, etc. No, if one is not attempting to make the money off of this one needs to survive, they are not attempting to make a living by definition. Or are you actually claiming that Shadow Ruff, Destroyer Shy, and Xfreds were attempting to become rich in adventure off of covering Tony Sonic?
Francine, this is my dream! My life will finally be rich with adventure!
Oh, adventure! Hold on. Hello, MasterCard? Do you accept payment in the form of adventure?
But...
Hello, colleges? I'd like to pay my son's tuition. I don't have any money, but my husband is rich in adventure.
Well, what'd they say?
I should note that my friend Hester also brought up the possibility that Key was referring to specifically these people trying to grow their channel through covering Tony Sonic. However, you would then have to prove that this is the primary reason they're doing such a thing, and to be blunt, I just don't see a reason for doing that. Remember, Tony Sonic has less than 3,000 subscribers. So it would be rather nonsensical to attempt to build a sustainable career off of covering him specifically.
But to tackle the rest of your part, Shadow Ruff actually called Charlie 5 a bunch of nicknames. He actually insulted him.
No, because Tony Sonic is act like a father to Charlie 5 who act as a teenager, mate. A whiny brat, stupid child that doesn't grow up, mate. Who doesn't use bro attacks in Mario and Luigi? Doesn't use bros attack in Mario and Luigi games.
Which isn't what harassment is, that's just being mean in a video, which is not the same thing.
And even blindly defended Tony Sonic without seeing where the others are coming from, and overall have an obvious bias towards Tony Sonic.
And again, that's not what harassment is, that's just being a fanboy of somebody. For reference, I was the person that video was actually about, hence why the video is titled React to Ephrommentator, after all. And not only did I never once actually feel harassed while watching that video, but I also find it more than a tad tasteless your example is somebody going after me to make a point I don't agree with. Oh, and for those curious, the example Kagura uses is Shadow Ruff making a bad argument and then jokingly calling me a racist.
It's got green hill zone. Sorry, but that doesn't work since Emerald Hill is different in both looks and design. How? They're both open green areas that exist to teach you how to play the game. They're also both fast-paced, and oh yeah, the second word in both of their names is literally the same. How are they different exactly?
Oh, I don't know, maybe, this, mate? Seriously, look in between them. One of them is mountain terrain with waterfall at the background, while the other is a lush green land. And yes, I know they're both called hills at the name, but doesn't mean you have to connect them as one. All Asian look all countries look the same. You racist mother.
But that's not harassment? Yes, the point is dumb, don't get me wrong. However, what about it constitutes harassment exactly? I don't get that part.
He also called Ephraim horny just because of the word lesbian.
Which, as we all know, is the textbook definition of harassment, I guess. Never mind how I could have sworn the entire point of this video up until now was that Key didn't accuse any of these people of harassment, and now you guys are talking about how it would have totally been justified for Key to do so. Remember, Xfreds was just saying what these people do in their videos in order to explain how they aren't harassment. Therefore, if Kagura is arguing against this, he's inherently implying that Xfreds is leaving something out, with the implication being that it makes it harassment. If Key didn't mean that, then what the fuck do you people even have to disagree with regarding this part of the video? And none of this is getting into the fact that Xfred specifically said that Shadowruff does harmless jokes, which is clearly what he would think these examples would be. You don't explain how they're not in the slightest again!
DS is just... DS, although his Tony Sonic videos are his most popular, he doesn't hate Tony Sonic as a person. He only hates his content. Another difference that you should get out is there's a difference between hating a person and hating content. How do you not get this?
Oh boy, Destroyer Shy. Who wants to take the mantle for this one? 'Cause boy, you're in for a wild ride.
Not me. I'll just address his actual argument at hand. World TV will do the honor. You see that there's a difference between hating a person and hating their content, but couldn't it be argued that that is irrelevant? Because repeated targeting of someone's videos is still harassment, whether you like to admit it or not. Like, could that not be the case here? I don't need to hit Ephraim to cover his entire library because that will be considered harassment.
I see the grammar expert has logged on again. Now, I want to make it clear that I have nothing to say against Kagura's point, but he could have said something along the lines of, but that would still, and not because.
Destroyer Shy claimed Tony Sonic is a manipulator, among other names, was passive-aggressive towards Tony Sonic as a means of stirring shit.
Do you have any evidence to back this up? Any at all?
Tony Sonic blocked him due to how often he did videos on him, which is funny considering you claimed TS was harassing Shari for the same thing.
But that's not what this message says. If anything, it's calling out Destroyer Shy for making the accusation that Tony Sonic's harassing Shari. As for your shot at hypocrisy, well, let's just put things in perspective real quick. Keyblade Master's video on Sonic King came out on January 12th, 2023. At that point, Tony Sonic's most recent video on Shari was his Everything Wrong with Shari's videos on the Sonic Riders trilogy, which came out in December of 2022. Tony's 40-second video on Shari 5, according to his Everything Wrong with Videos playlist. And given the massive disparity between how much Tony Sonic's covered Shari and how much Destroyer Shy's covered Tony Sonic, it's not hypocritical to believe that Destroyer Shy has not crossed the line of making too many videos, even if you are also of the view that Tony Sonic has. Remember, Destroyer Shy's most recent video on Tony Sonic at the time of Key's video coming out was, best as I can tell, their third.
And then you go off on me. And this is probably the stupid, and this is just stupid. Like, I only have 4 or 5 videos out of the 100 videos or more on my channel. And you blatantly accuse me of all people, along with 3 other people, of harassing people.
Dude, I just brought you up as an example of someone who covers one person to exhausting levels.
In response to Sonic King mentioning somebody attempting to make a living off of harassing another person, but keep ignoring that fact, I guess.
Something you even strengthen by bringing up how you've done 4 to 5 videos on him. Which, I must ask, not only you, but the rest of the anti-Tony Sonic community, how do you get onto Tony Sonic's case for covering Shari to death, yet go and do practically the same thing without even acknowledging how much of a double standard this is?
Okay, so even ignoring the aforementioned disparity, I actually watched several anti-Tony Sonic videos, and none of them begin and end with complaining that Tony Sonic covers Shari too much. If anything, their main issue is that Tony Sonic makes bad arguments while doing so, which is the actual factor that caused a community of people criticizing him to spawn in the first place. Examples of videos I watched in order to come to this conclusion include, but are not limited to, Destroyer Shy's video on Smash 4, where they never once say that Tony Sonic covers Shari too much, Sonic King's video on Sonic and the Black Knight, which sees him actually saying he likes both Tony Sonic and his videos, I should note, and never once criticizes him for focusing so much on Shari. Xfred's video on Team Sonic Racing, which never said that Tony Sonic covered Shari too much. And Shadowrust's video on Sonic Rush, which once again does not say that Tony Sonic's covered Shari too much.
Which, by the way, your response video was pretty solid, and the points were legitimately fair. And then you had to pull this little accusation at the end of it just to make it even worse. Why?
If a singular joke that didn't even last 10 seconds is enough for you to call a video bad despite having a lot of solid points throughout the runtime, then I question where your priorities are.
And why is that inherently unreasonable, Key? You aren't going to explain, are you?
On that note, make it worse how exactly? You don't really elaborate on how a singular pop chart can make a situation worse.
Okay, first off, what do you mean by situation? Xfreds was talking about Key's video specifically, but even assuming this is just a slip of the tongue, yes he fucking did, it's called the entire video! This video specifically exists for Xfreds to express why he dislikes Keyblade Master's joke. Therefore, the implication is it was a bad thing to put in, and the video would have been better if it didn't include it.
I can understand if it was like a subtweet or blatantly painted a target behind the back.
You mean like mentioning them in response to somebody else bringing up harassment? And therefore implying they engage in it? That seems like painting a target on somebody's back to me. Fuck, given harassment is banned by YouTube's terms of service.
Content or behavior intended to harass, threaten, or bully others is not allowed on YouTube.
Somebody being associated with harassment, yes, even for the sake of a joke, is not something most YouTubers want, because if people stop taking it as a joke, they could very easily lose their account.
And trust me, I understand that the title says this is more of a comedic approach. I understand that. I have no problem with that. What my problem is what the joke was in the first place. There is a such thing as taking jokes way too far. And this is one of them. That is, if you were joking in the first place.
River's point is nitpicky, but decent, so I'm just going to be speeding through that.
Also, I understand that your title is meant for comedic approach. That's a weird way of saying disclaimer.
You see, I'm not even really bothered by the grammatical correction there, so much as the fact that the sentence still doesn't make any fucking sense. You recapped Xfreds as having said that the title is meant for comedic approach and then replaced that with the disclaimer. But the disclaimer was not meant to be comedic. The disclaimer does say the video is meant for entertainment and not to take any of the jokes seriously, which I should note is not quite the same thing as saying you're taking a comedic approach, let alone that your video is a comedic approach, whatever the fuck that means. But at that point, I am just nitpicking. However, the disclaimer itself was not meant to be comedic.
Also, if you outright acknowledge that Key was joking, then I honestly don't know what to say here except GG.
Do either of those G's stand for G, it's like a joke can have implications or something by any chance?
By the way, I love how he says he has no problem with me joking, yet this entire video was made because of a joke that mentioned him in image alone.
And that's what we call Iron.E.
Yeah, if only he had said something like, this joke crossed the line in my opinion, therefore making it clear that his issue was not with jokes aimed at him specifically, but with the substance of it. Of course, he did do that, however, he accidentally said I crossed the line, so you guys just kind of made fun of him for that for like a minute, instead of actually engaging with the point. All while pretending like said nuance was never brought up in the first place now.
I'm tempted to put this accusation, I am so tempted to put this accusation in the so bad it's good category because this is just plain out laughable. But, oh my god. You understand how mad I was when I first saw this.
X-Freds, let me be real with you. There is genuinely nothing I could say to this except... you are coping and seething, which if I wanted that, I'd watch Spy Family.
Oh my god, guys! X-Freds is in a state of agitation over it being implied he's a harasser? God for fucking bid! What was the point of this interjection?
Now yes, Chari 5 has some moments that I do remember, although I'm not gonna get into those I'm not gonna go into those because that would just take too long. But at least he's willing to admit from his mistakes. I'm still waiting if you're gonna make an apology video or not.
Well, that depends. What is there to apologize for? As throughout this video, you've kept misinterpreting a singular joke to make it sound worse than it realistically is, and have done nothing to persuade me that what I did was bad and worth apologizing for. Instead, you've given me ample reason to not take you seriously and continue on my day without looking back.
After you spend 30 minutes covering him, of course!
Since the way you presented yourself is unprofessional, to put it kindly.
Hey, you already said that, and it makes equally as little sense now as it did back then, but also, that doesn't make a single fucking thing he says incorrect. Like, even if I accepted the notion it mattered, and to some extent, by the way, presentation does matter for a video to be entertaining, don't get me wrong, it still wouldn't make what X-Fred says about you any less true, Key.
Also, at the beginning of the video.
Before we begin, I just want to give a shout out to Ephrommentator for helping me see if this video was worth covering, and I'll be linking his channel down below as he does make good commentaries.
Well, at least we know who to blame for this commentary being a thing.
So not only are you attacking me, and 3 other people, you're also attacking Ephrommentator. Thanks a lot.
No! We're not doing this shit again after all the time you spent coping at my joke!
Like, X-Rays, do you not understand how a pod chart works? Especially since it's not like he brought up Ephraim out of nowhere, considering SK mentioned him in both the screenshot and in his own words.
We're not going over this again. Anyway, here's River explaining why you're wrong. You could say she's going over your point.
Like, if Key's pot shot involved pinning a target on someone's back, or using a subtweet that adds nothing other than injury, then I can see where you're coming from. But he's not even doing that.
We're not going over this again! Anyway, here's Kagura making literally the exact same fucking point he already made, down to using the exact same fucking examples as to how this situation could hypothetically be made worse, I guess, that he made earlier in the commentary.
Now, I have a lesson to you and a lot of Tony Sonic fans. Hey, to all people in general, life lesson, everyone. Think twice before you say it. Think twice before you do it. You refuse to do that, then something may or may not stab you in the back. Trust me, I've experienced it.
Why, that's a pretty good lesson there, buddy. Say, what's the title of this video? Dear Keyblade Master, unscripted serious video. Wait, unscripted? As in you went in head first without thinking twice about it?
That doesn't follow, though. You can go into something head first without thinking twice and still script the video you're making. Hell, you can do the opposite. I at the very least assume X-Freds believes this, given your video on Sonic King was scripted, and he feels like you didn't do that. Anyway, that's all I want to cover, so final thoughts, this video was incredibly frustrating. The trio was playing dumb throughout most of it, and constantly dancing around X-Fred's points as opposed to addressing them. It felt like they didn't so much want to disprove what he said, as find some reason to dismiss it. Good night, and good luck. I can't think of an introduction for this video, sorry guys.
Now this is not 100% confirmed yet, but it would appear that the new voice actor for Mario is none other than Kevin Afghani.
I just want to point out how he says he doesn't know if this has been confirmed yet, while the screenshot he shows of Afghani's Twitter account has a tweet of him confirming it.
And I don't really know what this dude has done. I'm not familiar with his other works, and I've never even heard of him before until just a few minutes ago. But apparently he's done some work in the world of voice acting and has landed the role of Mario in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Now, I wouldn't really care normally, it's just that, well, let's take a look at his profile picture.
Okay? Looks pretty cool, honestly. What exactly is your issue with it?
What do you see here? Any red flags? I see an enormous red flag. He's a pronoun person, okay? Pronouns he, him.
That's his bio, not his profile picture.
Now, I hear you ask, why is that a big deal? Aren't he, him pronouns normal? Isn't that like the pronouns everyone has?
So that's just wrong? Women don't use he, him pronouns, for example? And they make up just under half of the entire human population?
It's not like he's using kitten self pronouns or some other ridiculous stuff. That doesn't matter. The bigger problem is that he seems to think that it's necessary to broadcast those pronouns.
Or he just wanted to. That's also a very distinct possibility.
And the only reason I would guess that he feels that way
Shit, here comes the big leap.
is because of the larger cultural push from those on the left to rupture our identities and confuse everyone by teaching the younger generations that they can just choose to be whatever gender or any other thing that they want to be.
Or, again, I cannot stress this enough, he could have just decided to because he wanted to give that information in his Twitter bio. That is also very much possible.
I have to choose my words very carefully here because this is YouTube, but the mere acknowledgement of the importance, and I say that in quotes, of so-called pronouns in our culture today.
So-called? Are they like fake pronouns in some way? I don't get what you're going on about.
Is complicity in the degradation of this culture. I posted a reply to Afghani's tweet and I immediately was swarmed by a bunch of... In any case, one of the things they kept replying to me with was, well, you have pronouns too. Shut up. Like, seriously, shut up. It's not the same thing, okay? My quote-unquote pronouns are what they would have been 100 years ago, okay? My pronouns today are what they would have been 2,000 years ago.
Never mind how that's impossible given English is at most 1,400 years old?
Someone responded by saying a pronoun person is just a human being. Buddy, I'm not arguing against their existence as people. Of course they're human beings. You're just muddying the water here. What I'm against is using this commie newspeak to further alienate the younger generations from their own identities.
Alienate them how? By giving them a means to describe themselves? What the fuck are you going on about? And don't ask me how it's communist because I don't know either. Communism is an economic philosophy that has absolutely nothing to do with fucking pronouns. Anyway, that's all I want to cover, so final thoughts. The phrase mountain out of a molehill is thrown around a lot, but in this case it's totally accurate. Good night and good luck. Okay, I'm not normally the kind of person who responds to somebody calling a game I like unfairly difficult by just telling them to get good at it. But Blue Blade Bot's video on Mario 2 very much gives me that reaction. And look, Mario 2's a hard game, I'll gladly admit that. But just watch how he tries to make level 5-1 look way more difficult than it actually is.
First off, the level starts with needing to throw a Shy Guy riding an ostrich at a Panzer. Then you need to head into this cave where your faith in the level drains faster than I'm not even going to come up with a proper analogy for that. First, you gotta jump on logs, which it's fine, you did this since the first level, but then you gotta start jumping on these tiny-ass fish as well as the logs, and then nothing but tiny-ass fish.
I'm sorry, just look at this. He doesn't even attempt a super jump, let alone try to land on the fish from the looks of it. He quite literally just jumped right and hoped that would be enough to carry him. After he just got done with a section that revolved around platforming over a bottomless pit, therefore implying the next part of the level would also do the same. And by the way, if this section is too difficult for you as Luigi, you could just float over this entire part as Peach, like YouTuber Aqualung is doing right here. And by the way, he introduces this level by saying,
Yeah, by going inside certain pots in subspace, you can warp to other worlds, and it's my preferred method, because it makes getting through this game a whole lot less painful. But no matter how you do it, there's also the fact you have to put up with World 5-1.
But that's also not true. Here's a YouTuber named Mario Master X9000 getting the warp zone in World 4, which directly takes you to World 6. Therefore meaning you can skip 5-1.
You would think the worst is over, but eventually you reach World 7.
Yeah, the later levels are harder than previous ones. Is that a foreign concept to you?
Where it just bombards you with enemies left and right, and there's nowhere you can catch a friggin' break.
You'd think it's the last level of an already difficult game or something. I don't even know how to respond to this outside of, yeah, it's hard. What do you expect exactly? You don't even make an argument for it being unfair or anything. You just say there are a lot of enemies. Okay, well, on its own, that doesn't really tell us anything.
And to top it all off, there's Wart, who can only be hit in the mouth when it's open, and it only stays open for a split second before he starts blowing bubbles, which somehow cancel the vegetables that you need to throw at him. This took me a while. This has to be one of the worst bosses that I've faced in a long time. Hell, Wart is probably one of the worst villains I've faced in a long time. I'm not even going to bother going as to why. You can figure it out yourself.
I actually can't because you haven't really expressed any issue outside of maybe the short amount of time you can hit Wart. But even then, going through your footage, that appears to not really be an issue. Given every time you have a vegetable, you do hit him. And you yourself don't get hit once during the fight. At least in the clips you showed. It does cut to you having one heart later on in the boss fight. However, you never show yourself getting hit, which, given you're trying to make Wart look difficult, is a massive missed opportunity on your part. Show us something unfair about the fight. Show us you taking damage that was the game's fault and not yours. Show us something. Anything. Anyway, that's all I want to cover, so final thoughts? You don't strike me as particularly knowledgeable about the game in question, and the fact that you don't explain quite a few of your points further makes me not feel like you are particularly good at reviewing. However, if you were to fix these, I imagine you could be pretty decent. Good night, and good luck. Super Mario World overrated? Well, Brayden, let's see your arguments.
Super Mario World was released on the Super Nintendo as a launch title in 1990.
No, it was released on the Super Nintendo in 1991, although it did get a release on the Super Famicom in Japan a year earlier. And the Super Nintendo wasn't even released until 1991. So how could Super Mario World be the launch title for a system that wasn't out yet? And by the way, this is the first thing he says about this game in this video, and it's just wrong. And this is just one of several factual errors I found in this review, by the way. Here are some more.
Then, it was in the Super Mario Advance series in 2001 for Japan, and all other regions got the game in 2002. So why does other regions get the game almost a half a year later?
They didn't. Although Europe and Australia did get the game in April 2002, 5 months after the Japanese release in December 2001, the US and Mexico got the game in February 2002. 3 months later, not almost half a year later. Speaking of Mario Advanced, he brings it up near the end of the video and just makes this absolutely strange statement.
This at its core is pretty much an enhanced port. There's no drastic change from the original. But damn it, I'm disappointed that they didn't choose this game to have support for the e-reader. In the GBA version, there's minor fixes like saves, power-ups, behaviors, some minor stuff.
The ability to play as Luigi in single player, Luigi no longer being a palette swap of Mario and instead being close to how he was in Super Mario Bros. 2. Something which is noticeable through looking at his own footage, by the way, given he's playing as Luigi while he's saying this. Along with him actually mentioning the fact that in the original SNES version, Luigi is just a palette swap of Mario in this very video.
Luigi was basically using the same sprites as Mario, but the colors are opposite, so...
Which, I should note, he also complains about using this incredibly bizarre strain of logic.
It's not like this machine runs on rotary dials and punch cards. It's been almost 5 years, so I know it's not a hardware issue.
So it can't be a hardware issue because it's been 5 years since the release of the original Super Mario Bros., where Mario and Luigi were palette swaps of each other. I'm really fucking confused by this point. A status screen, a cutscene if you collect all the dragon coins, an easier time getting Yoshis that aren't green, audio clips of Mario and Luigi's voices, you know, minor stuff like that. Also, I have to take note of him listing saves as something that was changed in the remake somehow, even though the original also had a save feature. Oh, there's also this quip.
Alongside Super Mario Advance series, Super Mario World was there to make the system live a bit longer.
First off, it wasn't alongside the Advance series. The GBA port of Super Mario World was part of the Advance series. That's why it was called Super Mario Advance 2. Second off, what's with that quip about it making the system live a bit longer? The GBA was not on the verge of death in 2002 when the game came out in most of the world. Lines like that imply that Nintendo was desperate to give the GBA just a little bit of a longer lifespan when they really weren't, nor did they need to, again, because the GBA was a relatively mainstream handheld at the time.
Now, of course, this is the era where video games of the style didn't have much storytelling. We didn't have the internet either to tell us what was going on. Half the time, you didn't even get on-screen prompts on what to do.
This, however, is clearly not an example of that because you are currently looking at a screen of the game communicating the story to you. Fuck, the entire basic story of this game is essentially shown to you on this screen, which not only is the first thing you see upon starting a new file, but is also a screen you show in this video just before saying this.
Princess Peach gets captured.
Hell, technically speaking, you show the same text box later in the video in the form of its appearance in the GBA remake.
And if I were to give a summary of this game right now, we can't because there is a Game Boy Advance version. Normally you would find all that stuff in an instruction manual. This would be the go-to place for everything that game itself didn't tell you. This game takes place on Dinosaur Island.
Says the instruction manual is a good place to go for the stuff the game doesn't tell you? Goes on to say something the game explicitly tells you as soon as you begin it.
Yeah, this game doesn't break any boundaries in terms of graphics. Now that title goes to Doom running on a stellar 2 frames per second.
I'm not quite sure what Braden means by this. I think he's trying to say the graphics of Mario World aren't all that impressive compared to other games at the time. And while that's at best debatable, the fact that he doesn't explain how that is, or even what he means by breaking boundaries, just makes this another meaningless statement.
Yeah, he looks like a depressed lizard.
How does he look depressed exactly? He has a cartoonishly large smile and eyes which communicate that he's happy to be on this adventure. Everything about him seems incredibly upbeat, if anything. Fuck, you even call him excited immediately after this.
Come on, he's a bit too droopy. Or a bit too excited. The overall gameplay is fine. The controls are tight, which I like. The difficulty is up there, though, and I think this was a hardware thing rather than a developer thing. The enemies spawn right where you're going 90% of the time, and it doesn't help that there's a bit of popping in this game.
So I'll ignore the obviousness of saying the enemies are spawning where you're trying to go because, well, yeah, they're trying to stop you from getting where you're trying to go. Spawning in front of you, in between where you are and that final destination seems like a pretty obvious idea to me. And instead, I'll just point out that I watched this clip several times and even went through it frame by frame and could not find a single example of poppin', despite this being what he shows when he mentions it. And yeah, he complains about the difficulty quite a few times throughout this review, such as here.
World 3 was more annoying than it should be, and one of the levels has a bullshit starting here.
That can't be!
What exactly is bullshit about it? I don't know, and he never even attempts to explain it. Oh, and there's also this little part from the same section of the video.
It could have been the fact that every video game company had to keep the video game renters in mind.
He says talking about a game that was bundled with the Super Nintendo, meaning Nintendo didn't have to keep renters in mind because if you had an SNES, you were essentially guaranteed to have a copy of Super Mario World. And that's not even the only time remembering the game was sold with the system makes a point fall apart. Take this line, for example.
Yes, I understand that you need a game that isn't too easy for people to fly, yet you don't want this game to be too difficult where they won't play this game in general and not buy the game.
But they didn't have to buy the game, they just needed to buy the Super Nintendo, and the game was included. This point doesn't make any fucking sense. Also, yeah, nobody's going to want to buy a game like Super Mario World. Hence why it sold 20 million copies in the United States. And that's just after he drops this absolute whopper on us.
It felt like Nintendo had the core audience in mind that played every previous Mario game.
First off, I have to take note of your use of lost levels footage to make this point, which I think is supposed to imply that Mario World is harder than lost fucking levels? In which case, you need to explain that one, dude. But the reason this statement baffles me so much is because any amount of research would show that's the opposite of what happened. Mario World was specifically designed to be beginner-friendly and easier than the NES Mario games.
Miyamoto stated that they made Super Mario Bros. 3 for experienced players, but wanted Super Mario World to be friendlier to beginners. Tezuka said that any time a playtester said a section was too hard, they'd scrutinise it and potentially make changes. A direct example of this is the implementation of the dotted line blocks. These are blocks that are throughout the game, covering pits and other obstacles. When the blocks are activated, the game becomes easier. Kono stated that activating all the switches made the game much easier, and it was intended that players that were having difficulty with the game would aim to activate these, whilst veteran players would leave them off. Miyamoto liked this idea because he wanted to create a game that players would be able to explore and not simply complete, so making the game easier was a prerequisite.
Of course, we have the new feather power-up. Now riddle me this, Nintendo. Why did you make it the same as the Tanuki Leaf from Mario 3?
It depends on your definition.
I mean, sure, it does allow the ability to hold the jump button rather than jam it inside your Nintendo controller. And then you can fly as long as you can keep rather than a timer. But why? I just hope this is the last time they try to recycle a power-up. Come on!
So you say the cape feather is the exact same as the leaf power-up from Mario 3, list a bunch of differences between them, and then conclude by once again calling them the same. Best as I can tell, your only justification for this is that both allow you to fly. But that's an incredibly common mechanic, especially if your goal is to think of something that would make a platformer easier. Nobody would call, for example, Tails' ability to fly in Sonic 3 and Knuckles a ripoff of either the Cape Feather or the Super Leaf. Again, even ignoring the fact that in these two examples the flying mechanics work rather differently, the concept is so simplistic that using it can't really be considered copying anybody.
I would say the real issue is the game is kind of short. Just think about it. If we were to calculate the normal route and see how long that takes to get to the end of the game doesn't take long to get to the final boss and finish the game, because many people would consider that if you beat the final boss, then you finish the game. And the levels in the Star World are just bonuses.
No, not really, at least not when compared to other games from that time period. Super Mario World takes about 5 hours to beat, assuming you are only going after the main objectives. Meanwhile, it takes 4 hours to do the same with the original Donkey Kong Country, 3.5 hours to do the same with Mega Man X, and between 4 and 5 hours to beat Super Castlevania 4.
World 1's fine. It has a switch for you to press and unlocks blocks for you to use. There are colored blocks outlined that needs a switch to be pressed in order for them to show up. There's about 3 switches in the entire game.
There's 4 actually. There's yellow, green, red, and blue.
While they're not essential to beat the game, trying to 100% the game, you might need these.
What do you mean by might? You absolutely do. 100% completion in Mario World is defined as having found all 96 exits, and all 4 of the Switch Palaces count to that total. So, final thoughts. This review was utterly incoherent in several ways, and honestly, I do not feel like I got a better understanding of the game from watching it, so overall, it just failed at being a review. Good night, and good luck. An overrated SpongeBob episodes list? Well, I'll give anything a shot, I guess. Okay, I'm not entirely sure what I just watched, but I do know it was not very good. So let's commentate on it. The first thing I wish to point out is Phantom Strider doesn't seem to really understand what overrated means. He says he's not putting Band Geeks on this list in his honorable mentions because of how much joy that episode has given people.
Even if it's a little overhyped, and I don't laugh at all of the jokes, Band Geeks has brought people too much happiness for me to add it to this overrated list.
But isn't that a little backwards? If something is bringing a lot of people a lot of joy, and you personally do not feel like it is as good as everybody else does, that seems like more incentive to put it on the overrated list, not less. He then goes on to say he's perfectly fine with it getting all the praise it does.
There's certainly plenty of love for this episode, and I think that's fine.
But aren't you fine with there being plenty of love for all of these episodes, given you begin this video with a disclaimer essentially saying exactly that?
And just a reminder, if you do like these episodes, I totally get it. Many of them are renowned as classics, and they're popular for a reason, even if I can't see it. This is just my silly personal opinion.
And that's not even getting into the times he doesn't really explain what other people think of the episode, meaning we don't have any basis of comparison for his own thoughts. For example, his number 9 choice is the sponge that could fly of all episodes.
And what's 9 on the spongy list? The sponge who could fly, aka the lost episode.
Which he says he would struggle to give a 5 out of 10.
Because I'd personally barely give this one a 5 out of 10.
But what does everybody else give it? That's the basis for it being on this list. Fuck, that's the basis for the very next line of your video.
Talk about overrated.
The only person whose opinion he mentions in this entire segment besides his own is, I guess, Patchies, who he says really enjoyed it. it.
Even if I'm disappointed with it, Patchy is downright delighted with the episode. And honestly, I'm glad someone was.
But that's an incredibly silly reason, given Patchy's entire character is a hyperbolic caricature of a devoted SpongeBob fan. So he's going to enjoy basically anything and everything that has SpongeBob on it. Look, I'm not going to act like I have my finger on the pulse of the SpongeBob community. However, whenever I hear Sponge That Could Fly get mentioned, it's usually just seen as a mediocre ratings trap, with some okay jokes. Not one of the best episodes of the classic seasons by any stretch of the imagination, and certainly not something many would argue with if you give it a 5 out of 10. For the record, most of the time Phantom uses IMDb scores as his basis for how loved an episode is. However, he didn't for the case of Sponge You Could Fly, because it has a score of 7.8 on IMDb, meaning most people felt it was perfectly okay. And if he mentioned this, he'd probably have to cut out this line about IMDb.
You know, sometimes I wonder if this website gives every season 1 to 3 SpongeBob episode an automatic 8 to 9 star rating, regardless of quality.
By the way, Sponge You Could Fly isn't even the only season 1 through 3 SpongeBob episode that got less than 8 stars. Party Pooper Pants has a 7.7 out of 10, in fact. Another entry from this list, Season 8's Hello Bikini Bottom, only got a solid 7 stars on IMDb. Phantom doesn't mention its IMDb score, although he did find someone at the SpongeBob wiki who really liked it, I guess.
Some people really loved this episode, such as Thomas on Encyclopedia SpongeBobia.
This episode is really funny, and the plot is good. This is my second favourite Season 8 episode, behind It's a SpongeBob Christmas, and one of my favourite episodes from the post-movie era, without a doubt. 10 out of 10. Happy face.
Yeah, I should note, showing random reviews is something Phantom does a lot, although credit where it's due, he does usually at least attempt to make the case they're representative of the community. And although I won't be showing the vast majority of them, there is one that I just could not believe when I first watched this video.
According to TV Guy 3,
this episode had some great gags, and the Blue Danube montage was great. 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. How?
They just told us how. Your audience just saw the part where this person explains how they came to that conclusion.
Oh, coffee fudge swirl with Reese's peanut butter cups. Oh, I wonder what's in that.
You just listed off all the ingredients. Everything you just said is what's in that.
Or how about this part where he says that one of the episodes he's putting on this list, that being the episode Valentine's Day, could have gotten its high score on IMDb because of its sister episode.
Like most classic episodes, it got a lot of very high ratings, such as a 9 out of 10 from Irate Cartoons, and an overall score of 8.5 out of 10 on IMDb. But perhaps most people gave that rating for the other episode Valentine's Day is paired with, The Paper, which is in my opinion, much better episode.
But if that's the case, again, it feels like you lack an adequate basis to call this episode overrated, especially given apparently a large chunk of your community doesn't like it, if them wanting it on your list is any indication, and according to you, quite a few reviewers called it mediocre.
My community suggested this one a lot, and I can definitely get why, while some reviewers did agree it was mediocre.
This isn't even the only time he uses community consensus as a reference for what is and isn't overrated, by the way. Regarding Jellyfish Jam, he says,
and it certainly has some naysayers, as this was one of the most recommended episodes by my community.
And later, Club SpongeBob.
This one also got a lot of mentions in my community.
But isn't the fact that your community can come to a consensus about the episode's poor quality evidence it isn't actually overrated? For something to be overrated, the majority of people have to disagree with the statement that it's overrated. because otherwise it would just be negatively viewed by the population. He also seems to be under the impression that Club SpongeBob is about Squidward attempting to question the wisdom of the magic conch shell, and the blind faith of SpongeBob and Patrick leading them to success or something.
I don't even like the main message, that mindless obedience and never questioning magic superstition will lead to success. I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into this, and I realize it's played for laughs at the ridiculousness of it, but I guess I just didn't find it funny. And it was just annoying seeing Squidward punished for not mindlessly believing.
But Squidward wasn't punished just for not blindly believing the magic conch, he was punished for being a dick. There's a difference between, for example, not praying for water during a drought and making fun of people who do. The second of which being what Squidward was actually doing. For example, just before the food literally falls out of the sky, Squidward tells them,
As if the answers to all your problems will fall right out of the sky. Fall right out of the sky.
I should note that after this, Strider says,
yeah, technically being lost is his fault for accidentally catapulting them into the wilderness, but that doesn't mean I want to see him starving to death and suffering the whole episode.
There was nothing technical about it. It was just Squidward. Honestly, half the time it feels like Phantom Strider didn't even watch the episodes he's criticizing. Take this complaint regarding the sponge that could fly as another example.
And I have no idea what is wrong with the townsfolk in this episode. They mock Spongy continually for attempting to fly. Why?
Because they view the idea of a sponge flying as inherently ridiculous. Sponges are not flying creatures. Therefore, SpongeBob's dream of flying is, in the mind of the townspeople, him essentially dreaming of going against reality itself. Valentine's Day is another episode it seems like Phantom Strider just didn't get. He goes on about what a jerk Patrick is for wanting this big gift from SpongeBob.
The whole thing is basically about a misunderstanding between SpongeBob and Patrick. SpongeBob's big chocolate gift to Patrick is late, and Patrick becomes increasingly violent as he thinks SpongeBob only got him a handshake. Surprising no one, Patrick turns out to be a very materialistic, selfish starfish. This is an early season episode, and we can kind of see here that Patrick was a bad apple from the start. Look at Patrick here. He's being an awful friend. We see this constant build-up of resentment from Patrick, and it doesn't really serve as being funny or unexpected. It's just weak and cringy. Personally, I wouldn't care if my friends got me a handshake on Valentine's Day. I'd probably laugh. At least they remembered me on Valentine's Day. That's nice of them to remember me. This is one of the first times we see Patrick in that notorious jerk Patrick mode. He causes chaos and havoc among the carnival upon the tiniest change in his mood. It's one of the first points I started to say, hey, this Patrick guy is kind of annoying. I wonder why SpongeBob hangs out with him at all.
However, Phantom Strider leaves out a very important part, and that is why Patrick was so angry that he only got a handshake. It wasn't just because of that alone, but it was because, first, SpongeBob hyped up his gift to Patrick quite a bit.
And I have a present for you.
You do?
It's the greatest, the bestest, the most fantabulous present ever! But you can't have it yet.
And because, as we see later in that same episode, SpongeBob got gifts for everybody in town, including somebody he had literally met that morning, but appeared to have not really gotten a present for his best friend.
Really, it's the thought that counts.
Hey, SpongeBob! I just wanted to thank you for this box of chocolates.
No problem, Fran.
I mean, even though I was expecting more.
Thanks for the roses, SpongeBob. Happy Valentine's Day.
You too, Dave.
And not that it matters that we've been friends for so long.
Hey, SpongeBob! Thanks for the bike! Can you believe this guy? I just met him this morning.
Anyway, here are a bunch of errors I noticed.
To get them to quieten down long enough for him to actually have a chance to sell the house, he convinces Spongy and Patrick it's opposite day.
Actually, he only convinced SpongeBob of that. It was him who then told Patrick it was opposite day. Small nitpick, I know, but it still bothered me.
As a kid, probably the part I disliked the most was watching SpongeBob screw up Squidward's desperate attempt to move. Squidward isn't hurting SpongeBob and Patrick here. All he did was tell him it's opposite day. He's just trying his very best to sell his house and move somewhere more peaceful.
The fact that he is actually lying to them by making up a holiday that does not exist apparently doesn't count as hurting them to Phantom Strider. Nor does he recognize the fact that it was this very lie which caused the events that led to this opportunity being ruined for Squidward in the first place.
But probably what bugs me the most is the end scene. It's just weird. Finally, after all those years of Spongy nagging him, Squidward finally joins in on a game with SpongeBob and Patrick.
Looks like it's time for Plan B.
What Plan B? Where was the Plan B? Honestly, I have no idea what happened here. Because in the next scene, SpongeBob and Patrick have ditched Squidward to just go inside, leaving him half mad in the freezing cold. Like, what the hell, SpongeBob? That's your plan B? It just feels like a jerk move. You've waited so long to have your friend Squidward join in on a game, and you just ditch him when he finally joins?
Phantom, did you watch the same episode I did? Because, while yes, it did begin with SpongeBob wanting Squidward to join in on their snowball fight, that ended rather quickly as neither SpongeBob nor Patrick wanted to snowball fight. Squidward wanted them to continue, though, for his own entertainment, and tried to convince them to continue because of that.
That shtick comes from the bully Kevin being a one-note jerk to SpongeBob, and SpongeBob blindly likes him anyway for some reason.
I mean, all my life I wanted to be a jelly spotter, and now I'm out here with you guys with the nets and the jars and the jellyfish, and I'm with Kevin, and Kevin's with me.
That's about all we get. You see, Kevin is from the Jelly Spotters, and SpongeBob loves the Jelly Spotters.
For the record, I didn't edit anything there. Phantom Strider went from going, for some reason, SpongeBob likes Kevin, implying the episode doesn't really explain why that is, to a clip of SpongeBob saying that he's wanted to be a part of Kevin's group, the Jelly Spotters, for his entire life. Followed up with him quite literally saying why it is that SpongeBob likes Kevin so much.
And honestly, the final joke I didn't even understand. SpongeBob produces a giant bubble pie to save the day from a giant jellyfish. And I'm like, what? Even by SpongeBob standards, what kind of random incoherent nonsense is that?
You could even call it nautical nonsense if you would like. Also, there is a logic to it. SpongeBob himself directly explains it by saying,
Everybody loves pie!
92% of Americans enjoy pie, in fact, meaning that SpongeBob was making a pretty safe bet.
To me, this episode felt like an uncomfortable retread of Atlantis Square Pantis.
For those curious, no, Phantom Strider never really elaborates on how Hello Bikini Bottom and Atlantis Square Pantis are similar, making one wonder what the point of saying such a thing even was. The most we get is him derogatorily calling Atlantis Square Pantis' songs more coherent, I guess?
The story starts with an immediate long line of awkward sing-talking from the characters. Somehow, they're even less coherent than Atlantis Square Pantis songs.
But that doesn't equal it being a retread. That's just not what a retread is. That would imply they're doing the same things they did in Atlantis Square Pantis. A claim that, again, Phantom Strider never really justifies. Anyway, final thoughts. This list was just bad all around, and it constantly felt like Phantom had barely watched the episodes he was talking about, or was leaving out key details in order to make them look worse than they actually are. Good night, and good luck. Spoctor, Spoctor, Spoctor. Did you really think this was going to make you look better? Yes, tonight's commentary is going to be on Spoctor, specifically his video, Lio and Peaches Are Slandering Me. Originally called Lio and Peaches Are Monsters. A video that Spoctor took down while I was working on this commentary, the day after said video was originally released. The video is nothing more than a series of screenshots from a community post that Spoctor posted that same day, which he has not taken down in spite of deleting the video that I am showing you right now, where he attempts to argue against the claims that he had nudes of a minor on a flash drive which he kept after he turned 18. I'll be using this community post for screenshot purposes for the rest of the commentary. However, as you can see, the video did not contain anything special. It didn't even have any audio. As a video, it is hands down one of the laziest I have ever covered. The community post is so centered and small it's actually hard to read. And it honestly gives the feeling that Spoctor rushed this video out just to make something that disagreed with these claims. And that's especially notable given how long Spoctor had to respond to them. Both Lio and Peaches' videos are over a month old at this point. This is the best he could cobble together in a month? But presentation isn't everything, arguments also matter. So let's hear Spoctor attempt to dispute these claims. He and I were both groomed as minors. I was 16. Adults encouraged us to be sexual, and they told us it was okay. Some of them even participated at times. Not too long, 18, I realized I still had a small flash drive full of our prior nudes and other NSFW material we exchanged, and said, fuck, I need to get rid of these. The more astute among you might notice the immediate issue with this response in that it doesn't actually argue against the accusations. In fact, it confirms them. The accusation was that, remember, Spoctor kept a flash drive with nudes of a minor on it after he turned 18. As for the claim he was groomed, we don't have evidence one way or the other on that one, so I am not going to comment on if that is true or not. However, Spoctor, I do have to ask, if this really was the result of you being groomed, why didn't you mention that in your call with Junkie and Fagos? There, you described the situation as nothing more than a fling.
You know, how I acted back then. There's this fling that started, you know?
Might I remind you, that call was specifically so Spoctor would have a chance to address these accusations. Yet, despite Spoctor now claiming this was the main reason he did what he did, he never once mentioned it previously. I would say I'm surprised, but ultimately I am not. You commentary people genuinely do not see other humans as people, and that's why I left. Say what you want about me, call me an asshole, sure, but I am no goddamn groomer pedo. Spooter and I were both victims of many, many awful people that actually were. Again, another story that you just made up at this second. Spoctor, if that really was your reason for quitting commentaries, why didn't you mention it in your video where you announced quitting commentaries? Also, I went back and checked both Lio and Peaches' videos, and neither of them ever called you a pedophile or a groomer. You are making claims up right now. Oh, but what am I expecting from the man who said that Lio and Peaches were slandering him by saying he did something he admitted to doing, when slander is defined as the utterance of false charges or misrepresentations which defame and damage another's reputation, or a false and defamatory oral statement about a person. Meaning, if a statement is true, which you've admitted it was, it by definition is not slander. And that's not even getting into the utter stupidity of saying you were slandered when the person who gave Lio and Peaches the impressions that you did these things was you. It was your call with Junkie and Fagos where these accusations were originally confirmed according to them. Who the fuck slandered you there? Yourself? If it sounds like I'm furious, that's because I am. Spoctor is not only bold-faced lying to his audience with this community post, but he also must think they are a bunch of idiots if he genuinely believes this bullshit will work on them. Honestly, I've already talked about every claim Spoctor makes in this community post that I can respond to. The rest are things that are generally so vague that I can't prove or disprove, claims that nobody is disputing, or this part where he gives 3 screenshots of him talking with the person he saved the nudes of on a flash drive without even mentioning that's what people are mad at, might I add. Final thoughts, I genuinely don't know what else to say besides Spoctor is bold-faced lying to his audience and expects people not to notice. He doesn't even dispute the claims against him, and yet he still wants to play it like the bad guys are the people saying things that he admits are true. What else is there to say other than this is the perfect storm of lying and stupidity? Good night, and good luck. You guys ever have a video that the more you think about it, the less you like? Well, that describes what happened to me regarding Just Stop's video on Rick and Morty that came out early last year. Now, I should make it known that I am a fan of Rick and Morty. However, that is not why I dislike this video. As mentioned before, I had watched this video several times, and usually found it to be perfectly fine, even if I disagreed with it. However, then I started really thinking about the claims that Just Stop was making, and found several issues. The video in question sees Just Stop going through each season of Rick and Morty one by one and talking about their various qualities. And regarding seasons 1 and 2, I don't have much to say. I will point out it's a tad odd that Just Stop uses the word says while talking about how Ricks use Morty brainwaves as a cloaking device.
He even has instances of actively trying to push Morty's affection away, like in 110, where he says that he uses Morty's stupidity as a cloak to hide from the government.
As if that were something Rick just said to be mean and not an aspect of the universe the series takes place in? Fuck, later in that same episode, we see the villains actively torturing a large amount of Mortys specifically for the purpose of cloaking.
Why would somebody do this? It's horrible! Well, one Morty's enough to hide from the bureaucrats, but you get a whole matrix of Mortys and put them in agonizing pain. That creates a pattern that can hide even from other Ricks, motherfucker.
Although Rick does specifically tie it into stupidity in a way to be hurtful later on when he's having an argument with Morty.
You know what, Rick? I'll tell you something. I'm more than a human shield! Yeah, that's right. You are. You're a perfect impenetrable suit of human armor, Morty, because you're as dumb as I am smart. Which is why when I say, shut up, it's really good advice.
That wasn't an attempt to push Morty's affection away. That was because he was trying to get Morty to shut up while they were trying to sneak through Evil Rick's lair. He snapped and said something he didn't mean out of anger. It's incredibly common. Just Stop also gives this incredibly bizarre analysis of Big Trouble in Little Sanchez.
To that extent, in episodes like 207, you see how desperately Rick longs to be a part of some in-crowd or social group, regardless of if he has to do something dumb like turn himself into a kid. You see how he can only fit into most crowds for a short amount of time, partying and having fun, because when the party ends, no one really wants to be around him, which might explain why he's often so closed off to the idea of friendship or love and only shows it when he feels the most comfortable.
And while I do agree those are aspects of Rick's character, they aren't shown in 207. Rick didn't become Tiny Rick so he could go to high school and become popular, but so that he could go to high school and hunt vampires because he was bored.
What up, my Helsings? Who wants to hunt a vampire? Rick? How did you... Yeah, I got bored and then I remembered this morning how I blew summer off and I thought, hey, why are you such a grumpy douche, Rick? Go to the garage, transfer your mind into a younger clone of yourself, and get embroiled in some youthful hijinks. What's the BFD? So here I am. I'm Tiny Rick.
We also just don't know exactly how well liked Rick would have been if he had stayed in this setting, although he did still seem to be very popular when Summer got him expelled, if the reaction of the other students is anything to go by.
Summer, I thought you were cool.
I'm sorry, okay?
Oh my god, Morty. Your sister crossed Tiny Rick? Talk about self-destructive.
However, these are both minor issues. Then he starts talking about season 3 and he gets a lot wrong. And fair warning, I'm going to have to play some rather lengthy clips to make these points. But just know they're for the purpose of context. So, let's begin.
But I'd say the problem started long before 303, all the way back at the season premiere, the Rick Shank Rickdemption. Having just described the intricate details and theming behind 210, you should have some adequate context for where we left off in the story that this episode is picking up from. And I'm sorry, but whenever I look at this, all I can see is something that wasn't made with a prior plan in mind. Just look at Rick's motivation described in the episode. In-universe, he explains that his reasoning for turning himself in was to take down the galactic government from the inside, and in the process kick Jerry out of the family.
I should note that Just Stop is taking what Rick says way more at face value than we as the audience are really supposed to. It is true Rick does say these are his underlying motivations while talking to Morty at the end of the episode.
First thing that's different, no more Dad, Morty. He threatened to turn me into the government, so I made him and the government go away.
However, it's very likely those behind the show did not mean for us to take this rant literally, given it eventually devolves into Rick saying his entire motivation for doing anything is finding Szechuan sauce.
And I'll go out and I'll find some more of that Mulan Szechuan teriyaki dipping sauce, Morty. Because that's what this is all about, Morty. That's my one-armed man. I'm not driven by avenging my dead family, Morty. That was fake. I'm driven by finding that McNugget sauce. I want that Mulan McNugget sauce, Morty. That's my series arc, Morty. If it takes 9 seasons, I want my McNugget dipping sauce, Szechuan sauce, Morty. That's what's gonna take us all the way to the end, Morty. 9 more seasons, Morty.
And given this is the same episode where Rick injected the code for a virus into a fake backstory of his...
Whoa, is that it? The portal code?
Yeah, that's the 3 lines of math that separates my life as a man from my life as an unfeeling ghost.
Awesome possum. Mission Control, you getting this?
Holy shit, yes! Yes, we got it!
Thanks, Rick. I'll try to remember to shut off the brainalyzer. Actually, I think it shuts off automatically once your brain is liquid. Don't know, don't care. Pull me out. Hey, pull me out. Can you hear me?
Nope, they cannot.
Why not?
Because the code you just uploaded wasn't actually my portal gun formula. It was a virus giving me full control over the brainalyzer.
What are you talking about? This is a memory. You can't alter details of a memory.
True, but you can alter anything you want about a totally fabricated origin story.
It's clear that Rick is willing to alter parts of his backstory or motivation for whatever fucking reason he wants. In fact, I'd argue part of the point of that story beat in the episode is to inform the audience that we are not going to know much about Rick's backstory or motivations until a later date. I should note that Just Stop goes on to criticize the Season 5 finale for revealing that the Season 3 backstory was actually canon. I personally didn't mind this because I assumed that Rick only pretended like it was fake in order to mislead those around him. He's revealing it begrudgingly in the first place, remember? So obviously he's going to pretend like something he doesn't want to share isn't the truth, even if it is. Now, Just Stop has a great response to this argument. He just kind of says no.
At the same time, though, there could be an argument made that Rick acting like that backstory was a joke could be part of the facade he's putting on mentally, acting like he doesn't care to hide the pain. The thing is, though, that explanation is entirely retrospective and sounds incredibly assholey, so I don't find it satisfactory. And Rick clearly didn't show any fucking emotions about it one way or another after Morty sees, so the theory seems all the more unlikely.
Now, the first part doesn't actually prove anything on its own. It's just Stop going, well, it sounds ass-pully. Okay, do you have an actual argument as to why that is? However, the second half, where he claims that Rick didn't get emotional when Morty learned about it, can actually be explained rather easily. You see, Just Stop, they were in the citadel of Rick's at the time as it was literally fucking collapsing. Rick, once again, only begrudgingly gave Morty that backstory once Morty made it clear he was not going to trust anything Rick said unless he promised answers.
So did you help build the citadel? Did you just lie to me about everything?
Can't we just sneak through the cave base? We turned a new leaf, Morty. We're back to simple adventures.
It's not a new leaf until you tell me everything.
Morty, we really don't have time for this. The whole place is gonna blow.
No, I don't trust you. I don't want to do this anymore if I'm not gonna get straight answers from you.
God damn it. Here's my fucking downloaded brain, Morty. You wanna jump the shark? You wanna know my stupid crybaby backstory? Knock yourself out. Not now!
Actually, while I'm here, Just Stop really didn't get the season 5 finale. It starts with forgetting Sarah Marshall, where he makes this incredibly strange comment.
So, how did we get to 509, where a mental patient who appears here and nowhere else can plainly tell that Rick and Morty's relationship is abusive and unfair?
Now, first off, Just Stop mentioning this character doesn't appear anywhere else is just strange. Why would that matter exactly? Why is that inherently a worthwhile quality to mention? Now, as for how this character came to the conclusion that Rick and Morty were in a toxic relationship, he really didn't. The first thing this character says to Morty is that he was screwed over by Rick.
How do you know Rick?
Look, I came to your place with him one night after the bar closed. I started messing around in your garage and I spilled that portal stuff on me and he kind of launched me to Australia, like with this weirdly primitive catapult. But the ammunition
is an airtight carbon chamber. Yeah, that's how we lost our cable guy.
Although later on in the episode, he reveals he actually wanted to use Rick as his ticket to be more than what he currently was, and is now attempting to use Morty to do the same.
What the hell, man? I thought we were both victims of Rick's abuse.
Maybe we are, maybe we're not. Maybe we both just drink at the same bar, and maybe one night I tried to take his portal gun. See, I thought Rick was my ticket to something special, but it turns out you were, Morty. And look at me now. I'm a portal boy.
Basically, it's made clear this guy doesn't really think anything about Rick and Morty's relationship and is just telling Morty what he thinks he would want to hear in order to use him as a means to an end. I note this because Just Stop goes on and on about how, yeah, this guy is right regarding seasons 3 through 5, but not regarding seasons 1 through 2.
With that in mind, all I can think when watching 509 is that it's a culmination of someone trying to deconstruct the toxicity of the last few seasons without taking into account the first few seasons, since if they did, that deconstruction would end up turning to dust and blowing away in the wind, unable to ever be reconstructed. Basically, when put into the context of only season 3 through season 5, it does have some bearing and a point to make, but when put into context of the entire series, it only illustrates the ultimate representation of everything that went wrong with the series along its gradual fall into inconsistency.
But that's not actually as important as Just Stop thinks it is. This guy isn't actually trying to make a valid point about Rick and Morty's relationship. He's just trying to drive Morty away from Rick so he can take advantage of Morty. That's it. All that matters is it is something Morty would reasonably want to hear, regardless of how accurate the statement turns out to be. As for 510, Just Stop notes that very little actually changed for both Rick and Morty after Rick went off to have adventures with the two crows.
The ending of 509 made it clear this was a change Rick and Morty both needed to truly be happy, and yet, here we are, seeing them get back together in the next episode. We barely saw what Rick's life had become before being taken out of it, and in 510, after getting back with Morty, he doesn't seem any better than he was before. So I guess the main reason for their split happening didn't make either of them better at all.
But that's part of the point. Rick went with the crows under the impression they were enlightened creatures who would teach him. However, when he learned they viewed him as nothing more than a rebound partner, he basically went back to Morty in hopes of forgetting what he just did, treating it like a rather embarrassing episode. Just Stop also complains that we don't get to see how evil Morty being elected president of the Citadel changed it.
In a similar fashion, we don't get to linger on how the Citadel has changed with evil Morty as the new president, which could have also been its own episode. Instead, right as our duo gets to the Citadel, evil Morty out of nowhere already knows the two are there and preemptively invites them to dinner as soon as they arrive.
Which, first off, why would that benefit the series? Just Stop doesn't say why that's actually important enough to dedicate an episode to. All he says is, we don't get to see it. Well, we don't get to see a lot of things. Why is this specifically important? Also, it's implied that evil Morty didn't change the Citadel very much and in fact tried to keep a low profile. Hence why the Ricks were so surprised when he engaged in his, well, evil actions. Oh, there's also this part.
After Evil Morty reveals this whole selection process for the R+M we follow, Rick is questioned on whether he'd have gone back to Morty if the crows didn't leave him, and he's shown not knowing how to answer that question. All I have to say to that is bullshit. So writers, you're telling me that Rick had no attachment to the Morty he was with, and that he'd be willing to trade them in for a pair of crows any day. Have you fucks ever watched the first 2 seasons? Genuine question.
Not just a pair of crows, though. A pair of crows that Rick viewed as wise and enlightened, and he believed would teach him how to be a better person. You are stripping away anything except the most basic aspects of what happened in order to make this sound as ridiculous as possible. Anyway, I apologize for going on as long as I did. It's just, wow, there were a lot of issues there that I wanted to mention. Let's get back to Season 3.
And sure, to an extent you can reason that he also has the underlying idea of helping the Smiths, as he didn't need to save Summer and Morty when they came looking for him and got caught by the Citadel of Ricks, but even under that assumption, there are so many questions to raise. First, the idea of taking down the government from the inside is completely separate from the motivations he was shown to have in 210 on a logical level. Sure, in 210 the galactic government was able to find him and his friends after years of hiding and fighting against them, but it's not like Rick wasn't always wanted by the galactic government since episode 1. With that in mind, considering Bird Person mentions how he, Rick, and tons of their friends have been wanted by the galactic government for so long, why didn't Rick go through the whole process of turning himself in way earlier? I mean, when Rick says why he wanted to get rid of Jerry, which I'll get into later, what was it he said? We've got adventures to go on, Morty, just you and me, and sometimes your sister and sometimes your mom, but never your dad. You want to know why, Morty? Because he crossed me. Considering that quote comes from the series premiere, I should ask, why didn't Rick destroy the galactic government a long time ago so they'd get off his back end? I don't know. Bird Person and several of his implied friends wouldn't have died and spent so long having the potential to die while fighting them? Rick takes down the government like it's just another day, and he accomplishes it swiftly in a single episode, so how come he didn't do it earlier with just how many times they crossed him?
The entire time that clip was playing, I just kept thinking because Rick never felt like he needed to. Yes, the galactic government had been a continuous hindrance to him throughout the series. However, they were never really any threat to him. He was always one step ahead and as such did not have to worry about them too much. Especially given Rick's home planet was not under their control until the end of Season 2, meaning he always had a place that wasn't under their jurisdiction where he felt they couldn't get to him, essentially. An idea which appeared to be correct throughout the series, given the galactic government did not even make an appearance in the show until the Season 2 finale. The death of Bird Person, however, made Rick finally realize that these people were an active threat to him, his way of life, and the people he cared about, and made him finally decide to topple that empire. You mention how easy it was for him to do so, and it's implied that this is a large reason as to why he wouldn't have, because he always assumed that if the situation called for it, he could just do it really easily anyway. Therefore, again, they never presented any form of danger to him. But the events of the Season 2 finale taught him that even a force he could easily defeat can still do a lot of damage to him and those around him if they aren't dealt with. Hence why he decides to be proactive for the sake of himself and those he cares about.
It's been stated that Rick and the government don't mix because he values freedom above everything else and dislikes being controlled, so why would he ever leave himself in a position where a big power he could easily topple might find a way to take away his freedom and, I must reiterate, kill his closest friends?
Because he didn't realize he was in such a position until the death of Bird Person. He didn't know Tammy worked for the galactic government, nor did that possibility even cross his mind.
That's not the only plot hole for this episode either. Considering the original implications of Rick turning himself in was so the Smiths could have a normal life away from him and the people after his head, to the point he basically says as much in 210, why would he then spend the next episode actively getting out of that same prison?
Because while getting out of the prison, he's going to take down the entire galactic government, aka the people he's specifically trying to protect his family from.
His actions in this episode actively destroy what his character arc was coming to at the end of Season 2, because he's not taking responsibility for anything, and instead going off on this plan that seems to completely disregard what could happen to his family because of it. That was the whole reason for the climax of the second season! Rick understanding that his reckless actions have a negative impact on his family, and that nothing good can come from him getting them harmed while running from the consequences of his actions. It was about him taking accountability for his choices and not pushing it onto the people he loves when it could destroy them.
Yeah, reckless actions like, oh, I don't know, not doing anything about the galactic government that hates you and wants to kill you, which you could easily topple, and running from your problems? You mean like running and hiding on Earth, specifically in hopes the galactic government doesn't find where you live and doesn't harm you and those around you, as opposed to going after them head on? I don't see where the contradiction is, Just Stop. I'm sorry, I really don't.
And obviously at the end of 210 there was still plenty of room for growth in Rick's character and everyone around him, because while him turning himself in does keep the Smiths away from trouble, they're still left miserable because Rick is running away from his issues instead of confronting them, choosing to push his family away once again, though this time under the pretense of wanting them to be safe.
Running away from his problems by literally going to the group of people who were the cause of his most recent problems and getting rid of them. Just Stop. Did you and I even watch the same fucking show?
We get a small glimpse into what life under them is like for Earth and the Smiths, but once again that time spent is so short that we can't have an adequate view of what the galactic government is truly like and why Rick might even want to go against them.
You already stated why Rick wants to go against them. Your exact words were...
It's been stated that Rick and the government don't mix because he values freedom above everything else and dislikes being controlled. I will say that Beth and Jerry splitting up is probably one of the only things this season opener does right, at least in concept. I kinda dislike how Rick basically splits them up himself when previously he made it clear that he didn't want to interfere with their marriage, even attempting to help it in the past by setting them up with couples therapy. Plus, it seemed like Jerry's words were part of what originally made Rick want to give himself up, agreeing with his sentiment. But then again, the motivations are all topsy-turvy for plot convenience anyway, so, you know, what the fuck ever.
Yeah, Rick did try to help Beth and Jerry's marriage before Jerry crossed him, at least in Rick's mind. And Jerry's words were one of the reasons why Rick turned himself in, so he could take down the galactic government and in the process get Beth and Jerry to divorce each other.
I'd also argue that 301 was the beginning of Morty's inconsistent downward spiral into either being a regular teen like he was in earlier seasons, or more often than not, starting from this episode, a complete cynical asshole. It's another topic for later, but I just brought it up to mention that in this episode, Morty shoots Rick thinking he's actually killed him with no remorse because Rick called Morty stupid.
While being yelled at by two other people, one of which being his sister, and told that he essentially just caused himself, his sister, and Rick to die. Forgot to mention that part.
That's enough! Drop the gun, Rick! Morty, I know you're too stupid to get this, but you're really fucking this up right now. I'm not letting you let my sister die! Drop the gun! I wasn't gonna let her die, you fucking moron! Ha!
Aww.
Point is, he thought I was going to. I totally did, by the way. You're a fucking moron, Morty.
Morty, you fucking idiot!
You're a serious fucking idiot, Morty! You basically killed us all! You're as dumb as a bag of sand! Idiot, Morty! You're Rick has the dumbest thing I've ever laid eyes on! Idiot, dumb Morty! What an idiot! What a dumb Morty!
You claim this makes Morty an asshole. I say it just means he can't handle pressure all that well, especially when the stakes are as high as he thought they were, and especially after he just heard that he ruined the chances of him and Rick succeeding.
Season 3, Episode 1 of Rick and Morty introduced the concept of Rick being
the smartest man in the universe.
He's more like a demon or a super fucked up god.
To give a brief summary before entering this bullshit, the concept I'm referring to is pretty self-explanatory. Though some casual viewers might not remember if it was like this from the beginning or not, it is pinpointively provable that characters outside of Rick himself,
I'm not the nicest guy in the universe. Because I'm the smartest.
Began calling him the smartest person in the universe,
the smartest mammal in the galaxy,
during the Season 3 premiere and no sooner. And it is the most bullshit thing to ever come out of the Season 3 writing room. First, looking at it from a purely logical perspective in the context of the last two seasons, something I'm sure the writers who came up with this idea didn't take the time to do, it already makes no sense. Going back to 106, Rick Potion number 9, he makes a mistake in causing everyone to lust after Morty like rodents in heat. Then, to try to compensate for that, he uses Mantis DNA, since since by his logic, mantises have bad mating habits, but that just leads to horny mantis people. So he tries to fix that, and then Rick and Morty's universe is completely full of Cronenberg versions of everyone. Tell me, do you think the smartest man in the universe will be able to make such a basic mistake as mixing up scientific ideas with logical fallacies that don't work when thought of on a deeper level?
I mean, maybe, given Rick was in a bit of a rush in that situation, and as such didn't really have the time to think about these ideas on a deeper level. But even ignoring that, what is this supposed to prove? Rick can't be the smartest man in the universe because he occasionally makes mistakes? But intelligence has nothing to do with amount of mistakes made. Intelligent people can still screw up. In fact, research has found that intelligent people are more likely to make mistakes than less intelligent people.
How about 103, in which he had a guy dying of various diseases? Shouldn't the smartest man in the universe have a failsafe for dealing with something so easily foreseeable?
Again, being the smartest man in the universe wouldn't inherently mean he has perfect foresight all the time in every situation. Fuck, strategic foresight and competitive intelligence are even considered to be different things by psychologists. So yes, Rick could be the smartest man in the universe and have bad foresight.
Oh, and we can't forget about 206. Oh my god, 206, the Ricks must be crazy, annihilates the concept of Rick being smarter than anyone else by its very inception. To not take up too much time explaining it, Rick has to go in his car battery when it stops working, which he's made a small universe inside of to operate machines that give him most of the power. But another scientist in that self-contained world has actually made his own battery of the same idea, and they go inside that box and find yet another guy attempting to do the same. The point is, by making a self-contained world in a box where society can thrive, eventually Rick is faced with minds that develop to be just as intelligent as him, with the ability to think on a similar brainwave despite their universe being made to do nothing more than power his car. When the other scientist discovers his purpose to Rick, the two of them have a sort of mental dick measuring contest in which Rick only wins by a hair in basic hand-to-hand combat. As a whole, it shows that man will always have a way of recreating different versions of more convenient processes, and if we think only people like us can do it, we're in for a shocking surprise. There's also some great dark comedy of being forcibly trapped into an endless cycle of labor or dying, but the bit to focus on here is that Rick met people who were just as smart as he was. That's the point of that particular episode. I guess we might as well count it as non-canon though, since that's the only way this episode can work on a canonical level.
Okay, you read way deeper into that episode than was actually intended, and it's incredibly obvious because nowhere is it stated that this scientist is as smart as Rick, just that he managed to do one thing that Rick also did. We have no idea how he did it, how long it took him to do it, if he did so in a more or less intelligent way than Rick did, if he did so in a more or less efficient way than Rick did, and so on and so forth. Anything beyond this scientist also created a microverse is just speculation on Just Stop's part, which he's treating as canon. Anyway, Just Stop goes on to talk about how Rick becomes more overpowered in Season 3, and that is a complaint I do completely agree with, but he still makes a few mistakes.
In 303, Rick is able to turn himself into a pickle, then finding a way to make a full suit of body armor out of rat parts with an endless supply of ammo, yet he's also so brain dead that he can't do something as basic as not having the serum to turn him back precariously placed over him with a Rube Goldberg machine anyone would notice.
But not anybody would notice it. Morty just noticed it when the family left for family therapy, and he had been in the garage with Rick for the longest, meaning he had the most time to notice it. Just Stop brings this up again later, by the way, and says,
I could assert that it'd be easier for him to make a new serum as the smartest man in the universe, or that he could have had a backup serum in the first place since having a plan B seems like an obvious thing someone with basic intelligence would do.
Now, I've already talked about how intelligence and foresight aren't the same thing, so I'm not going to cover that again. Instead, I'm just going to ask, how exactly do you expect a pickle who could not fight back against a cat, might I add?
Oh, great. Stupid cat. Whoa, 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 whoa! I know what it looks like to you, Izzy, but I'm not a snake. I've seen the YouTube videos. I know cats are scared of cucumbers and pickles because they think they're snakes. I'm not a snake. I'm a pickle. I'm a pickle. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa.
to do something as complicated as make a scientific serum which would morph him from pickle to human.
So throughout the episode, Rick has kept himself from airing out his issues, instead going on a violent rampage of scientific machines he probably shouldn't have been able to create.
Unlike serums which turn him from pickle to human, those he should have been able to make really easily, apparently.
And weirdly, he mentions YouTube, cat videos, Reddit, and more, like, why would he look at these things? Rick is stated in Season 2 to be an 80-year-old man, though in Season 3 they go back on that and say he's 70. Am I to believe that he watches cat videos and looks at Reddit?
Just stop! You do know old people use the internet too, right? According to one survey, 3/4 of people 65 or older use the internet as of 2021. Anyway, that's all I have to say regarding how Just Stop talks about Season 3, and unsurprisingly, I have a few issues with how he talks about Seasons 4 and 5 as well. So let's just go through those real quick.
Morty being the one to get Rick killed with little regard for him, not even trying to bring him back in service of going after Jessica as love interest.
And because Morty has a death crystal which tells him that if he brings Rick back, he'll die during one of the adventures he goes on with Rick.
406 relies on the premise of showing any potential follow-up episodes to previous stories and shitting on continuity. Gee, do you think maybe the writers have some hang-ups about the Rick Lantis mix-up being so beloved?
Dan Harmon was thrilled with how liked the Rick Lantis mix-up was. What are you talking about?
In 403, he's got anti-booby trap armor that protects against all traps.
Okay, this is supposed to be seen as another way Rick is overpowered, however, this just looks like common sense to me. Yeah, if you're going to go to a place where booby traps might exist, you should probably create something that would make you resistant to them if that's an option. It just seems like Rick exercised the most basic logic.
405, he's got a weapon that can pause people instantly for seemingly as long as he wants.
That's not even a new idea for the show. Rick did manage to create a device that stopped all of time back in Season 1, remember? So why wouldn't he also be able to create a device which freezes certain people in place for as long as he wants?
Oh, and did I mention magic got introduced in the show? Like, actual magic that is stronger than science, which Rick is able to harness and use to his benefit way more easily. But then he decides to not use it ever again for no reason, besides saying magic actually sucks because he had a weird dragon orgy. Even if this Rick decides he doesn't want to use it, why hasn't there been any other Rick or Morty that did? Why hasn't the Citadel switched to a magic system when it would greatly benefit them all and grant infinitely more power? Why hasn't any other antagonist used magic? These are the kind of questions I'm forced to ask when you introduce such broad topics without any thought, show. You did a bad.
Because Rick's incredibly arrogant, and therefore he would not give up the very thing he spent his life pursuing, even if a more convenient alternative to it were to arise. This is basic characterization.
Not only since the whole thing could have been avoided by Rick having some basic sense and reading Morty's obvious body language, something you'd think the smartest man in the universe could pick up on.
And we can add perfect understanding of body language to the list of things Just Stop has arbitrarily decided is related to intelligence. Anyway, that's all I want to cover, so final thoughts? Just Stop did not understand Rick and Morty. I don't know what else to say. Good night and good luck. All I am going to say for my introduction is I'm only covering this video because of Toga. Also, watch his video if you haven't. It's not required or anything, it doesn't have any context for the video I'm about to cover, it's just a good video.
Okay, before we actually start commenting, I want to bring up a disclaimer because my god, there's so much shit to unwrap here.
Before we actually start commentating on this video, I want to commentate on one specific part of the video.
Disclaimer. Anything I say may be offensive to some people, so pay attention. If you are easily offended, I recommend you click away. Video will obviously contain foul language, me constantly going off topic, and my f***ing opinion. Thank you for your time and enjoy the damn video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Number 1. Anything I say may be offensive to some people, so pay attention. Quick question. Who's gonna get offended by a guy on the internet making a generic video about how much a cartoon channel sucks?
I don't know. Who would be offended by a commentary on that video? I ask because you put a disclaimer at the start of your video warning your viewers about crude humor, which could be considered offensive to some. Reading the disclaimer, it's clear the user in question is referring to their strong language, which, again, some people do consider offensive, albeit a rather small portion of the population on places like YouTube. Oh, also, regarding that whole fucked up sense of humor thing, Gumdrop Animator changes this person's avatar with various incredibly vulgar manga panels. I'm going to be switching that out with a picture of Cookie Monster smoking a pipe.
That is, unless you mean from the standpoint of, oh, those idiots on the internet are so gonna get triggered over me doing my opinion. In which case, fuck off.
So there are people who would be offended by this video. You just invalidated your own point, even if you include a fuck off to those people afterwards. And by the way, it's rather ironic you dismiss this content warning on that basis, given the entire point of it is essentially to tell those people to fuck off, albeit a lot nicer. Or were you saying fuck off the person who made the video because they included a content warning, I guess? Nothing about this makes any sense.
Number 2. Video will obviously contain me constantly going off topic. Are you sure you wouldn't be promoting that out loud? I mean, it's nice that you're gonna tell people right off the bat that this is gonna be an unscripted video.
Even though scripting videos and going off topic are in no way mutually exclusive, meaning this conclusion does not follow in the slightest.
But given how much you go off topic, I still can't help but feel like this is a bit, well, for the lack of a better word, off.
How? You don't have any explanation, and by your own account, this appears to be pretty accurate.
Number 3. This video will also contain my f***ing opinion. Why do I get a feeling that that opinion thing is more of a shield rather than, him actually giving his opinion?
You know, I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with the reasons stated in this text which you put on screen and I checked for half a second. Which is not enough time to read the text and is on the shorter side to even be able to pause the video to read the text. Either way, this is just a massive pain in the ass all around to see your explanation for your point. The text is also on the harder to read side because it blends in with the picture on screen, I should note. So in terms of communicating your reason for believing what you said, you have failed in essentially every way you possibly could.
Finally, while this isn't a big issue and more of a nitpick, I'm still going to bring it up anyways. The color scheme you're using for your little disclaimer card here is very, very, very strange. I don't know about you, but putting sky blue text against a somewhat muted red background doesn't really look that well. My suggestion is that you should alter the colors a little bit, whether it be for the text, the background, or both, so that way everybody's eyes in the audience are, shooting out their sockets.
The thing I like about this point is she begins by saying she's nitpicking, and then by the end is saying that it's so bad it's causing her eyes to shoot out of her sockets. Even as comedic hyperbole, the tone by the end doesn't really match how you started, I'm sorry.
I was sick for quite a while. Let me stop getting my personal issues and shit. Alright, let's get straight down to business.
Oh, no, continue, please. As far as video making is concerned, it's perfectly okay for you to go off topic in the intro as well as the outro, seeing as how it's not the main bulk of the video.
Says who? Personally speaking, I would find that really annoying if I clicked on a video and then it took the person several minutes to actually discuss the topic in question.
Cartoon Network, this is y'all video. If you watching, or anyone that works in Cartoon Network, whoever's ahead of it, I don't care. Listen and pay attention.
Yeah, after all the other millions of similar rants, I don't really think Cartoon Network's gonna pay attention this time. Especially seeing as how this list isn't really that different from the others.
Which other ones? What is your frame of reference here? And for that matter, how is this similar to the other ones? You haven't explained that, and he's barely said anything, so it is nowhere near self-evident. I should also add that a large amount of people making the same complaint would actually make Cartoon Network more likely to listen to them, if only because that's a larger set of viewers who they are turning off through their decisions. That could start watching the network again if they changed things up.
Now, I thought to myself real hard about if I wanted to make a rant video or just a regular hear me out video. I picked rant. I'm not going to be losing my shit in this video like, you know, any other rant video, because it's a cartoon channel. And of course, I'm 18. Oh, I'm supposed to watch adult shows and not watch cartoons because that's for kids.
Not really. The reason isn't the fact that you're an adult watching kids' cartoons. You can watch whatever the hell you want. The reason is the fact that there are lots of adults out there who hate on kids' shows, not because they're poorly written or offensive or anything of that sort, but because they're children's media that's meant to be enjoyed by children. If these people actually use their brains, then various people such as Clay Claymore and Jesus with Bazooka 79 would have never made fun of them.
Okay, well that has quite literally no relevance to what's going on, given the person you're covering isn't doing that. They're not hating on these kids shows for just being kids shows, judging by what you've shown us so far.
Cartoon Network, listen up real quick. You better pray to God that Teen Titans Go lasts a lifetime, like Simpsons or SpongeBob or any other long-running franchise.
What? So you can continue making the same generic-ass videos about how the show is terrible and how it ruined your childhood amongst many other pointless stuff? Yeah, no thanks.
Oh, you mean those arguments he hasn't fucking made yet? And it's funny you keep calling him generic when your examples of generic arguments are, again, things he hasn't said. He hasn't insulted the quality of Teen Titans Go yet, and nowhere in any of the clips you show in this video does he say the show ruined his childhood or anything of the sort. Honestly, my biggest issue with this video is it consistently comes off like you aren't actually listening to what he's saying, but are instead just going into this with the preconceived notion that it's a generic Cartoon Network rant, as you put it earlier, and are mentally shifting the video until it resembles that. I don't feel like I'm actually watching a commentary. I feel like, well, this.
We're not having a real conversation, are we? You're just waiting for me to finish so you can say your next thing.
The reason why I'm making this video is because, well, if you have been living under a rock, Teen Titans Go is coming out with a movie. Yeah, a movie. And you might be wondering, okay, regular Teen Titans came out with a movie as well, Trouble in Tokyo, so what's the problem with that? The problem is it's going into the theaters.
The fuck kind of complaint is that? Oh no, they're making a movie that's meant to be shown in theaters. So?
You know, maybe you'll figure out why that's his issue if you actually let him talk for longer than the amount of time it took him to introduce his point to the audience.
Now, okay, I know. Now look, I'm an old dinosaur. My memory ain't as strong as it used to be. I don't know if Teen Titans, The Trouble in Tokyo, ever made it into the theater, but this one is.
I honestly don't know how to respond to this. Like, if you want to watch Trouble in Tokyo, just watch Trouble in Tokyo. Ignore the movie. Oh god, my head hurts.
Oh my god, you just fucking said this, and it holds equally as much relevance as it did last time, which is to say, none. Allow me to pull the rug out from under you. His point is not that it's bad that Teen Titans Go's movie is being shown in theaters. His point is that Cartoon Network is oversaturating the show and giving it things it would never give other programs, such as a theatrical film. Even though he makes it clear later in this video that he doesn't like Teen Titans Go, his dislike of it isn't even the main issue he has. He could think it's the greatest show ever and still feel this way. Hell, there are shows I like that I have this issue with. For example, I like Steve Harvey's hosting of Family Feud. But that doesn't mean I think it's a good idea for GSN to air it 100 times a week. If only because now, whether or not you watch GSN is entirely dependent on whether or not you want to watch Steve Harvey's Family Feud, which greatly limits the amount of people who are going to watch the network.
Apple and Onion is a horrible fucking show. I couldn't watch one fucking episode. I was like, first of all, Apple looked like some dank meme. And the damn onion don't even look like a fucking onion. I thought it was a motherfucking radish, nigga.
Really? Those are your complaints with the show? I know you can't fully criticize the show seeing it's had 10 episodes right now, but that doesn't make your complaints any easier to swallow. Like, okay, onion doesn't look like an onion. So? There are tons of cartoon characters out there that don't look like what you think they are. That's just how cartoons work.
Okay, 2 issues. 1, I can't help but notice you didn't give any examples to back up your point here. And 2, okay, well, who's to say he doesn't take issue with that in other cartoons as well? You saying it happens in other cartoons doesn't actually mean anything.
But the thing is that now it's like running Cartoon Network. If I could tell you right now, my nigga, let me tell you something. Random shit in a cartoon is good. There's a certain extent of how much randomness in a cartoon it can take for it to be good. Let me explain for a second. SpongeBob, randomness, alright, is good, but the type of humor in it makes the randomness good. Adventure Time excels in random shit. And it's funny as a motherfucker. Regular show is random as a motherfucker. But it's good and funny. Then all other shows, I can't name all of them. Oh, well, Foster's Home Imaginary Friends, I mean, random monsters and shit. That's random. Kids Next Door, type random. You know, random shit. Now, if I told you that one of these episodes of Teen Titans Go explained how the episode of the Titans playing in the bathroom, and at the end of the episode, we have finally found out that bathrooms are not what they really are. Bathrooms are Now,
okay, ignoring the fact that some of those shows aren't really that random like you thought they were.
Like which ones?
Why is it exactly an issue when Teen Titans Go does random comedy?
It's not. He just spent an entire minute telling you the issue is not that Teen Titans Go does absurdist humor, but that he doesn't feel like the show does it particularly well.
Is it because of some legitimate reason, or is it because of Teen Titans Go?
Who the fuck wouldn't call their reasons for disliking something legitimate? You're essentially asking him, is it for good reasons or is it for stupid reasons? Most people aren't going to say, my reasons for having this opinion are dumb.
Yo, what this episode is about? Yo, dog, this episode right here, dude. Let me explain right here for a second, my nigga.
What the fuck was the point of playing that small clip from his video before skipping again? Why not just skip either the entire section or play it out?
But this shit, in one episode, nigga, first of all, the bright ass colors in the episodes is already enough. They had to add in stupid shit. I'm like, a flying bathroom, nigga? What the fuck? First of all, like I said, I see random shit on cartoons. It's not bad to have random shit. But I don't know why the hell is going on in this episode.
Oh man, there was such a point in all of that. It was so pointy.
And when I mean us, I mean by the 90s kids. And motherfucking early 2000 kids that been there from the start. Y'all try to diss us and shit. I see the little promos that come out with Teen Titans Go, and the episodes teasing the shit out of us, acting like, oh, we gotta be serious all the time, and they clearly sensitive. And they're clearly sensitive because they keep making episodes teasing the OGs. We keep telling them we ain't trying to tease y'all, we are trying to help y'all.
I'm sorry, in what universe is sending death threats as well as mindlessly speaking into the microphone over generic pointless shit supposed to be helpful?
I'm sorry, but when has this person sent a death threat to anybody? Fuck, when has any critic of Teen Titans Go sent a death threat to anybody? I'm not going to sit here and say for sure it's never happened. I mean, there are a lot of Teen Titans Go critics. It wouldn't surprise me if at least one has by now. However, you don't show any evidence to back up your point. You just assert it.
They clearly don't learn from their enemy. They're gonna ride this show's dick until the end, and they're gonna sit there like, well, damn.
Implying this is the first time Cartoon Network has been in this type of situation.
No, he isn't. What the fuck? Where did you get that idea? Anyway, final thoughts. The way Gumdrop Animator consistently missed the point of the person she was covering makes this one of the most frustrating and confusing videos I've covered. Like I said earlier, it constantly feels like she's not even listening to it, but is instead just waiting for him to finish so she can make whatever point she already planned on making anyway, regardless of what was actually in the video in question. Good night, and good luck. So, a while ago, I was on Twitter, and I saw that somebody had posted a picture of the thumbnail and title of a new Sensitive Society video called "No, This Is Not Transphobic," with the caption, "Who said the McDonald's ad was transphobic? Skull emoji." I decided to check out the video and immediately noticed that Sensitive had changed the title to "This McDonald's Japanese ad made people mad." Although archive.org does confirm that the video did once bear the title, "No, this is not transphobic." However, the change in title doesn't make the video itself any better, so there's still a lot to criticize because, wow, this video is bad.
True story, I was about to go to bed and I get this DM on Twitter. Please follow me, I will really appreciate it, and if you do, I promise I'll send you $20,000. So they tell me to look at this commercial from McDonald's in Japan. So I see this video about 4 times just trying to see what the drama's about. I mean, this video got over 100 million views in just a few days. I'll play the commercial and let me know if you see anything wrong with this, anything that's cancel worthy or, you know, racist or bigot or transphobic or homophobic.
What exactly was the point of listing racist, homophobic, and transphobic separately when they all fall under the umbrella term of bigoted?
If you catch any of those vibes, please let me know.
Furthermore, if you have any idea how to edit audio so you don't get cut off early, please inform this man, because apparently he has no I'm just gonna speed through him playing the McDonald's ad for the sake of time.
Okay, so that was my 5th time watching this video, this commercial, to try and figure out what the big issue is. You know, I guess Twitter people have a lot of free time on their hands to the point where they're mad at an animated commercial.
I know, why can't they be more like you? Somebody who's making a video bitching about people who are complaining about this ad.
It's a dad and a mom and a daughter being happy, a commercial. Like, what's the big issue here? I see nothing wrong with it. Some people are saying that this is disgusting because the dad doesn't look like the daughter.
Really? Are you going to show us anybody saying that to prove that this is a claim people are actually making as opposed to something you just pulled out of your ass? The answer is no, he's not going to. And in honor of that lack of evidence of anybody claiming this, I am skipping his entire counter.
And I'm guessing a lot of these people who are watching this commercial have clearly never met their father or their mother to know how families work, which, you know, of course, it's Twitter users being mad. So, of course, they're motherless, fatherless, loveless. They don't know what a happy family is. Because to get upset at this fucking commercial promoting chicken nuggets, you gotta be wild. 99% of the population who saw this video thought, huh, that's pretty cool. I like the music. I like the animation. It's cute. It's adorable. Cool. You know, moving on.
I would say, based off of what we've seen in this video so far, 100% of people thought that, given you haven't shown us anybody who didn't think that. I just want to point out we're a quarter of the way through this video. By the way.
Hell, maybe some of them order some chicken nuggets, some fries, whatever, which is the intent of this commercial.
Thank you for explaining to me what the point of advertising is.
But it blows my mind that I'm seeing people having mental breakdowns, labeling this as transphobic because you don't involve a trans couple or a black person. And it's like, this is Japan. I'm not saying black people or trans people don't exist in Japan, but like, let's be honest. So can you really blame them for not being quote unquote inclusive?
You didn't present an argument. You literally made up this claim and then could not debunk it. All you said was, well, let's be honest, okay, about what? You have to actually finish that sentence in order for it to count as a response. I think what he's trying to say is Japan has a much smaller population of both black people and transgender people than the United States, and in the case of their black population, you are absolutely correct. However, this is not the case for their transgender population, which is actually slightly higher per capita than that of the United States, meaning, if anything, you'd expect transgender people to be more common in Japanese media, not less.
I mean, just look at these comments. 70,000 white supremacists are going to make think pieces about this. And I'm guessing if you like this drawing, this animation, you're automatically a white supremacist because white happy family?
Holy fucking example, and you completely misrepresented it. The tweet did not say that everyone who liked the ad was a white supremacist. Just that white supremacists didn't even like the ad per se, but were just writing think pieces about it. Which aren't quite the same thing, for the record. A think piece is a piece of writing meant to be thought-provoking and speculative that consists chiefly of background material and personal opinion and analysis, according to Merriam-Webster, after all, not a statement of agreement. And before anybody asks, no, Sensitive does not debunk what the tweet said, nor even does he really disprove what his straw-man version of the tweet said. Instead, he just kind of insults the user for a bit.
Like, you gotta be extremely terminally online. You gotta be straight up a fucking loser to be like, this has an agenda, guys. They're trying to get me to start a family and have a kid, and they're just trying to brainwash me. Oh my god, get him off me, they're trying to poison my brain.
I'm sorry, I can't get over the utter irony here. Sensitive saw this tweet that's incredibly mundane and extrapolated it into something major so he could complain about people looking at a mundane McDonald's ad and extrapolating it into something major. This is the tweet in question that Sensitive is talking about. It does not say anything about brainwashing or propaganda. It just says white supremacists are talking about it. That's fucking it. This is an incredibly frustrating video to watch.
Dude, it's not that deep. It's a fucking burger commercial.
Dude, it's not that deep. It's a fucking tweet saying white supremacists are talking about a burger commercial.
And I decided to check out the profile, and, you know, it kind of checks out. This is what you would expect. We need more female dictators. You know, your typical Twitter user.
Yes, Sensitive is absolutely convinced this is a serious belief the Twitter user in question holds, and not just a joke. Also known as what it obviously is.
Your typical Twitter user who thinks they know everything. The typical person who thinks they're always right. And if you disagree with them on anything at any level, you're transphobic, you're a bigot, you're a racist. This is the type of person we're dealing with. And
do you have even the first piece of evidence to back this up? Because otherwise, it seems like you're doing nothing but making massive assumptions about this person's character in order to dismiss what they said, otherwise known as an ad hominem. Because even if this one Twitter user really has all of these negative qualities And I cannot stress this enough, sensitive society has not proven such a thing that wouldn't make what they said in their original tweet wrong.
And someone responded to her with this, and she says, I'm not reading all of that, go back to making Sheen order ching chong. So, it's always funny to me how these people are always, we're so oppressed, we need love and support, and we need allies by our side. And then, when you disagree with them, they turn out to be racist. This happens all the time.
Yeah, what do you expect from somebody who's identified themselves as a racist in the past? Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that? I actually read this person's Twitter. Here are some tweets from them. I am an alt-right racist. Actually, I think that's the only tweet I need to read to get my point across, that sensitive society did not do any research about this person before making these massive assumptions about their character.
And this person says right-wing propaganda post. Now, I hope this person's joking. I've been scrolling, guys. And when I say I've been scrolling through the bottom of this tweet to find tweets like these. And there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, this is propaganda by the right-wing agenda trying to poison you into bringing normal families, well, quote-unquote normal families.
And by a lot, you mean one person who you said might have been joking.
And a lot of people don't know this because they don't go outside. All they do is be on their phone on Twitter refreshing and seeing all the inclusivity they see on commercials. But if you go outside, most people out there are white people.
That very much depends on where you live, sensitive. Most people on Earth aren't white, remember? And this is especially the case in nations like, Japan, where almost 99% of the population is Japanese, Chinese, or Korean, not white.
I mean, just imagine this. Imagine seeing a wholesome, cute commercial and your first thought is right-wing propaganda. They're trying to poison me with their agenda. It's like, dude, you're sick in the head. Like, you're actually extremely fucked up. You need therapy. And this person says, why are people hating on this? And someone responded with, it's so misogynistic. But how do we get from, hey, look, it's a happy couple enjoying a Happy Meal, to this is right-wing propaganda?
She explains why she feels this way in the reply to the tweet you are currently showing. I know you saw this tweet because you show it slightly later in this video, after you spend a while insulting this person without actually addressing their argument, because these points are apparently so ridiculous you can't think of a way to refute them outside of, again, needless insults. And by the way, I wouldn't even mind the insults if they were included along with actual fucking points, but we don't get that. It's just you're wrong because you're stupid, which doesn't disprove anything.
And she responds with, not all women want a family. These disgusting men think that it should be everyone's ultimate goal. She came to this conclusion from a 20-second McDonald's burger Japanese commercial. And I gotta say this, shout out to Japan. I love Japan. I haven't been, but I plan on going next year. Does that make me a bad person because I want to go and visit Japan? Are you in therapy? And if not, you should be, because you're fucking insane, okay? Who hurt you this badly to the point where you're like shaking as you're seeing this this happy couple? You're like, this is triggering me because I never had anyone who loved me. Who hurt you? That's what I want to know.
I just want to know how you came to this conclusion, given all she did was calmly call something misogynistic on Twitter. Even if you think what she said was stupid, and by the way, I don't even fully disagree with you on that. She wasn't acting in a manner most people would call triggered. You just made that up.
If I'm not reminded that being straight and white are literally evil and promoting minority murder, I cannot eat there. It's always the people with the fucking anime profile pictures. It's always them.
Sensitive, there's something about this tweet that just makes me think this is obviously a fucking joke. Especially given it's a reply to somebody who appears to be right-wing, complaining about how ads in the United States show white people as idiots and black people as intelligent, I guess. which is in of itself a reply to another user who appears to be right-wing saying that this ad, quote, single-handed made the Zoomer generation realize that Western media is actively against them and trying to subvert their existence. Wasn't this video supposed to be about people who were mad at this advertisement and not people who were using sarcasm to compliment it? Or do you just not understand what a joke is? And no, Sensitive doesn't actually respond to the underlying assumptions of that joke. Instead, he just shows it, appears to think it's serious, and moves on. Anyway, that's all I want to cover, so final thoughts. When Sensitive was not missing the point, he was making completely unsubstantiated claims. That's really all there was to this video. Good night, and good luck. Before we begin, I just want to say that although I am a fan of the Amazing Digital Circus, that is not why I decided to do this commentary. It was because the arguments being made were rather bad. I do want to note this title though, the not-so-amazing Digital Circus. You see, it's clever because the thing he's reviewing is the Amazing Digital Circus. However, by saying it's the not-so-amazing Digital Circus, he is also stealthily implying he personally does not view the product as amazing.
So I didn't care for Digital Circus.
Move this man!
Can I just talk about how much I hate this method of opening videos? You know, where somebody states an unpopular opinion and then says something to make it clear they're expecting a large backlash for it. It does nothing more than make any potential critics look like mindless fanboys who are just upset you didn't like a thing they liked. It's very poisoning the well-esque. Even though said people haven't even made a statement yet, given you haven't said the thing they'd respond to, so they aren't even really there for you to poison the well against them.
Yeah. Have fun roasting me in the comments. I'm sure I deserve it. But as the lone hater island in a sea of praise.
I mean, 57,214 people felt the need to leave a dislike on the upload of the pilot at time of recording, so you don't seem particularly alone if I'm being honest. Don't get me wrong, it's certainly an unpopular opinion, given how well received this pilot was, but it's far from one only held by you specifically. Fuck, the day after Sarcastic Chorus's video came out, Cartoonshi uploaded a video pointing out how the show had already generated an abnormally large hate-dom. Anyway, Sarcastic Chorus basically summarizes the points he's going to make, which I'll just address when they appear later in the video, and then spends around 6 minutes going over all the things he liked about this pilot. And look, I'm not going to say you can't make positive points in a negative review. That would be ridiculous. However, I am going to say that you shouldn't be spending 6 minutes straight making them, especially if you advertised your video as a negative review. After all, I came here to see why this person did not think the pilot was amazing. So spending so much time focusing on the positives, especially at the start of your video before you've delivered any criticisms, is just bad structuring on your part.
Let's get to my issues. And let's start with a big one that makes the most sense before I steadily get more and more pedantic. This show has been described as I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream with the aesthetic of an I Spy book. Two books that I actually love, and I can see myself adoring this show. But from just the pilot, I was left thinking that it is just okay. It's a great concept with all right execution and a lot of great polish, with the biggest source of discontent for me being how I never really buy into like the psychological horror of just being here.
What did any of that mean?
Like it's there. it's trying. My god, is it trying. But the phrase that comes to mind when I'm trying to describe these moments, for me, is performative existentialism. This show is great at planting little things to unsettle you, but every time it goes for the big swing, it always feels like a bit.
We stay right here, where I can keep my hundreds of all-seeing eyes on you.
I know this is a dark comedy, but every time it tries something like this, the vibe it gives off is... Ooh, implications!
You mean the same implications you just said the show was really good at?
Ooh, liminal horror!
I mean, yeah, that is what the show is going for in that scene. You certainly pointed that out in a silly voice. Look, I'm going to be blunt. I'm not even sure what Sarcastic Chorus's point is here, and I've listened to this part maybe 5 times. His complaint about these characters being performative, I assume, was attempting to communicate that he felt the characters were acting disproportional to the situation they were in. However, now he's saying the show puts too much emphasis on the issues with the setting, to the point where I guess it doesn't come off as subtle. At least that's what I'm getting. I'm honestly not entirely sure because he communicates this argument so poorly.
Like, I feel like I'm laughing at it rather than with it here. The show wants to press upon us so badly what a horrific existence it would be to be trapped in this world. But for me, I'm kind of just sitting here thinking about how unserious this feels. As yeah, it's a terrible situation. I kind of figured that out in the first 3 minutes. Nobody's handling it well here, but between the moments of horror that are beat for beat the exact moment you'd expect, slow zooms in as their mind breaks from the realization only to pull back with a joke, not to mention a hallway exit scene that feels like it is on its knees praying, begging, desperately asking for you to ask questions about what's going on. What's that computer mean? What's C&A? What's the spoiler? What the fuck is in the cellar? It takes me out. I don't hate it, but my honest takeaway is, oh, look how hard it's trying.
You see, this is another point that I kind of get what he means, and I don't mean I agree with it partially. I mean I kind of understand what he's trying to communicate, except not really. You complain that they're trying to scare you, I think, but why is that a bad thing, especially for a horror comedy product? Would you prefer it if they weren't trying and instead giving the impression they weren't putting effort into the end result? Or do you mean it lacks subtlety? And I should also note, you saying they're trying too hard, I think, also totally contradicts your complaint that it's basically doing the obvious actions for this situation, given that would be a hallmark of laziness, not extra effort. None of this makes any fucking sense.
Which is just so condescending on my part. But I am struggling to explain why I just feel so detached. This just keeps me from engaging with the story on its level and what it's trying to do. But I think part of my unseriousness is that within this pilot, I struggle to have any sense of danger.
Well, that's probably because the pilot isn't meant to give you a sense of danger. It's meant to give you a sense of feeling trapped. It's introducing you to this isolated setting where the main horror comes from being transported to this place and not even remembering who you are.
There's fun slapstick to it, but I kind of struggled to register any of this as a threat. As in the moment, but especially in hindsight, the story just keeps taking me out of it and just showing there's not much threat here. And that just leaves the lukewarm comedy.
You know, direct danger is not the only way a horror story can have, well, horror. Psychological horror does exist, and that's clearly what the show was going for in the pilot. It's the setting itself that's supposed to create horror, not anything that happens in the setting, if that makes sense.
As you realize that the only real danger for these characters is the abstraction, as giving up and going insane. The abstraction beat the hell out of Rackety, but despite a royal ass whooping and glitching out, which does seem painful, but it's kinda unclear if the abstraction can actually kill them, as we never see an abstraction destroy an NPC or glitch out something to an unrecognizable state or absorb it into itself. Instead, it just looks like it hurts.
You do know physical pain is still a form of danger, right? This is yet another critique I just don't fucking get.
Cain can snap his fingers and fix them physically, so really this brings back the focus on the character's mental state. That the only way for these characters to go is for their minds to break, to give up, and for them to forget who they are as they lose all sense of themselves, devolving into these frustrating monstrosities that can only lash out. So unless that aspect is dug more into, and we watch someone start to slip and for it not to be done with a wink, the threat isn't there to actually get me to care.
So the threat isn't there unless it's done? Do you not know what a threat is?
So if I don't find it uproariously funny, and the psychological horror is just then all I have left is the intrigue of what's gonna happen to these characters, and the associated nightmare feel that comes along with it. Which I'm unsure of how much they're actually gonna delve into these characters, and which part of them is just gonna be chalked up to a joke. It's really just all possibilities at this point.
I mean, you'd think this is a first episode dedicated to setting up the rest of the series or something.
This pre-K McPlay Place oversaturated visual vomit kinda drives me insane. Like, they really did a good job designing this place. It's that perfect I Spy kid show environment that's meant to look friendly, but only makes you feel crazier sitting there. But for me, the problem comes from the fact that I find it really distracting half the time. There's so much going on in this background. There's so many colors, so many things going different ways. I feel like the show half the time doesn't do enough to bring focus back to what I'm supposed to be looking at.
Okay, this is a complaint I somewhat get, however the clips that he shows to back it up, to be blunt, don't actually do a good job demonstrating this. Take this clip with the abstraction. Obviously, it's what you're supposed to focus on, not only because it's the only thing on screen that isn't bright, and therefore it ironically stands out more, but also because it's moving much more than anything else on screen. Therefore, your eye is naturally drawn to it. And during this shot, also shown in that segment, by the way, it's incredibly obvious you're supposed to be looking at Pompey because, to be blunt, what else is there to look at?
My uneducated guess is that the lack of detail in intentionally bright colors make it so that the soft blur that they do to delineate what's in the foreground and the background doesn't do enough. As instead, it kind of still looks like it's in focus even when it's actually not, meaning that all these wide shots feel like that they have way too much going on.
I mean, given the entire point of wide shots is to show a lot of space in one single shot, I don't really see how that would be a problem. I mean, yeah, it could be communicating a lot, but that's the entire point.
Which is something I can also say about Kane's design.
Move this man!
You already used that clip, and it makes even less sense here, honestly, because at least when you used it in reference to saying you had a distaste for certain aspects of the pilot more generally, I at least understood the show had gotten a large enough fan base to where some people might mindlessly dislike you for that. However, are there really big fans of Kane's design who will irrationally hate you for criticizing it? Is that a thing? Can you show me some evidence for this? I'm very confused.
Okay, now the real hill I'm about to die on, for basically no reason. But for as fun as the eyes and the mouth look is, I often found it more distracting than anything else. Yeah, some real artistry went into making these teeth emote. Yeah, put it all in the comments, I won't read any of them. But for me, years of masking has set me up to make just way too much eye contact. So when Kane's on screen, I always feel like I have to be focusing on the eyes. But since he's talking most of the time, and yeah, he is probably, like, he's not my least favorite character, I do feel like he's the one whose comedy and just bit misses the most for me. Half of that is intentional, but he is the one character I'm like, okay, this is more cringe than cute. But when he's talking most of the time and I'm staring at those eyes, what I'm focusing on is interrupted by his teeth moving around and just getting in the way of my point of focus. So I pull back to watch the teeth actually say the thing, only for that to lead me to drift back towards the eyes again and rinse and repeat. I feel like I never know what I'm supposed to be looking at with this guy other than the nebulous everything.
That's kind of the point, though. Kane was designed like that in order to communicate that this is a world run by him, remember, which is rather different than the one we are used to inhabiting. Therefore, we're going to see the strange and odd, if only because the person who designs this world and rules it, to our knowledge at least, is himself very strange and odd by our standards. What you said isn't even really a criticism of the show, it's just what it's communicating to you. You describing that back to your audience means the show has communicated this with you successfully. Which seems like a good thing if I'm being honest. And don't get me wrong, it's okay if you dislike the design for other reasons. However, you are criticizing it for essentially fulfilling its intended purpose.
Kane feels like he was a really fun character to animate, but this eye mouth situation is my personal hell, and it feels a little bit like I'm watching anime with subtitles. We're at a point I'm not really watching what's going on, but I am, but I'm not, since my focus is constantly being split.
Again, you're supposed to be in a new confusing world. I really don't see the complaint here. Anyway, that's all I want to cover, so final thoughts? I have no idea what he was trying to communicate with most of what was said in this video. Good night and good luck. One thing I've noticed about the commentary community is every time there's a drama where the winning side appears to be obvious, a large chunk of poorly researched and just all-around bad videos pop up supporting the winning side. Said videos are rarely ever criticized unless it later turns out the side that appeared to be in the right actually wasn't, and although I understand why this is, at the same time I feel like this needs to change. You need to criticize your allies even when they're in the right, because they could have very well came to the right conclusion through bad reasoning, misinformation, or downright lying. I mention this because the recent situation with Spoctor has caused some videos to be made which, honestly, I think need some criticism. If you wish to know my full thoughts on this situation, I would recommend the video I did on Spoctor's community post regarding it. Another YouTuber who covered this drama was Sav. Somebody who has previously been criticized by people like myself, Mushroom Girl, and Communist Creeper. Sav has done 2 videos on the Spoctor situation, the first of which is on the allegations more generally, and the second is specifically a response to his community post. The first video isn't all that bad. The only real mistake I noticed was that Sav says the call Spoctor had was between him, Junkie, and Ponder.
Not to mention someone also recently uploaded a video about Spoctor theory and leaked one of the calls between Junkie and some other person, and I'm pretty sure it was Ponder Sprocket, but that's besides the point.
When actually it was between Spoctor, Junkie, and Phagos. She also gets the entire controversy kind of backwards. Here's the clip I'm referring to, and I'll just explain after.
Basically, in the call, he admitted to possess child pornography. And the victim itself in question was 14, and he was 17 at the time. And pretty much when he turned 18, he decided to destroy the fact that he possesses child pornography.
Okay, first off, Spoctor was 16 at the time, not 17, and the girl in question was 13 at the time, not 14, but that's a bit of a nitpick. However, the issue at hand is not that Spoctor got rid of this material when he became an adult, it's that he kept this material after becoming an adult. Fuck, you even end this video by plugging Lyo's video on the topic, where he specifically states the issue was that Spoctor kept the material after becoming an adult.
Spoctor admits to having the spicy material of a 13-year-old on a USB drive well past his 18th birthday, sometime between the 18th of April 2019 and September 13th of 2019. Forget asking why he saved it at all. The fact that he waited until after he was a legal adult to destroy it is enough of a problem. I know kids are going to trade this stuff with each other. They shouldn't, but they do. And if you're a child and you have done stuff like this, knock it off. The problem here is that Spoctor saved it and kept it until well past adulthood. This is disgusting behavior.
Oh, there's also this part which just rubbed me the wrong way.
But anyway, Spoctor, if you're watching this, don't ever fucking come back. Not only you're a narcissist, but also a fucking weirdo.
Really? Weirdo is the strongest word you can use for somebody who kept nudes of a minor after they turned 18? You couldn't think of anything even slightly stronger? Anyway, that's all I have to say about her first video. Now let's move on to her second one. The video starts out okay. It's primarily just Sav reading out Spoctor's community post, but then she just says a couple of things that are so fucking stupid I need to mention them.
And the fact you're treating this as if Leo and Peaches are trying to demonize you in any way, shape, or form is kind of laughable, to be honest.
But they are. They're trying to demonize him because they believe he has done legitimately bad things and should be criticized for them. The definition of demonization is quite literally the act or fact of regarding, treating, or speaking of a person or thing as entirely bad. I'm not even saying that Lyo and Peaches are wrong to do so, for the record. I think demonization can be justified, in spite of its negative connotation, but the fact that Sav wants to completely pretend like it's not happening does make her look dishonest.
Because it seems like you're just getting really defensive. And usually when people are defensive is when they're hiding something. But yeah.
Or, hear me out on this, it could be because he's being accused of keeping the nudes of a minor after he became an adult. Would you not act defensive if you were accused of that? How he acts has nothing to do with how truthful he was. That's entirely dependent on what he said. And yes, I believe there was a lot of non-truth in that statement Spoctor made. However, that doesn't give you the excuse to act like him daring to get defensive when accused of something this serious is evidence that actually there's more that we just don't know about. What the fuck is wrong with you? Anyway, that's all I want to cover, so final thoughts. Again, these videos aren't terrible by any stretch of the imagination, however, they are poorly researched and use bad logic, and I would recommend Sav attempt to fix these issues going forward, or else she'll continue making mistakes like this over the course of her content. Good night, and good luck. Just a fair warning, although this is far from the worst commentary I've ever seen, it is one of the most frustrating, and you guys will see why throughout the video. So the first thing we see is text, the color of which not only hurts my eyes, but also in general just makes the text hard to read.
But anyways, I was on YouTube and randomly got recommended this video by Melanie Miku called Transgender Representation in Gaming, A Brief History. You know, with a title like that, a title that good, we can already infer this is going to be one of the best videos of all time.
C-A-P
Especially when the thumbnail has Birdo, a character who literally is not trans, and also Vivian from Paper Mario, which, you guessed correctly, is also not trans.
Get to it, I can't take this shit no more, man.
I do really love how the trans community will literally grab at any crumbs with, any crumbs with their, crusty, grimy paws that they possibly can for those representation points. Like, seriously though,
Yeah, that's great and all. Are you going to actually start the video anytime soon, or are we going to have to listen to you continue to engage in drawn-out sarcasm and say committee instead of community for the rest of fucking eternity?
Have we fallen so far as a society that we now think Birdo, a character who dresses up as a girl, is now trans?
But that's not what the video you're covering bases this conclusion off of. Instead, it points out lines from the Super Mario Bros. 2 instruction manual that hint at it. Such as one which states that Berta would rather be called the feminine name Bernetta.
Also, if it wasn't obvious enough, this is a person who throws around the homophobic and transphobic card like it's nothing.
Really? Can you give me some reason to believe that instead of just blindly stating it? Because I don't actually view that as obvious, truth be told.
Transgender representation in media has always been a troubling topic.
Yeah, I know, we aren't even 5 seconds in yet, and we're already stopping the video. Okay, now I just want to say, I am not transphobic, I am not scared of trans people, okay? Okay? However, let me just say this has got to be one of the most ugliest stills I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, did you even try to make her look feminine?
Yeah? The OC in question is wearing a nightgown, for example, which is typically seen as feminine clothing.
This straight up looks like a cross between Chris Chan.
I have a boyfriend. Tell me why I'm stuck as a virgin with breast.
And My Little Pony, like if they had some mentally challenged baby together.
He's out of line, but he's right.
I have nothing to say about that insult outside of I don't see it in the slightest, but instead I just want to point out how you felt the need to put a clip of somebody saying you're right after your point. I think we have found the commentary equivalent of sitcom canned laughter. Anyway, I'm gonna be skipping a rather tasteless and just not that funny joke about the, as already mentioned, non-existent visual similarities between this person and Chris Chan.
Also, am I just a fully functioning retard?
Yes.
Or, like, what? Because she put they/she in their, like, pronouns or whatever, is that even a thing? Like,
to put this in terms you can understand,
yes.
Specifically, feminine-leaning non-binary people tend to use they/she in order to signify they're fine with both she, her, and they/them pronouns.
Like, I'm serious, I thought it was they/them. I feel like at this point, can we just mix and match?
Yes.
Like, what's stopping somebody from putting he/she? I guess nothing.
Yes. Fuck, I've seen people do that before. I've also seen people list their pronouns as any, all, which essentially means they're fine with being called whatever, including both he, him, and she, her.
In more recent years, sometimes we get absolutely fantastic trans representation, both in-depth or just casually. Characters that help truly normalize the idea of being transgender.
These aren't my words, okay? I'm just quoting a very based YouTuber named Poncho. Okay, YouTube, these aren't my words.
They're just words you're about to parrot with the implication that you agree with them. Fuck, you even call the guy saying it based, and unless you're talking about his pH level, most people understand that to be a term of endearment.
Poncho said, why would I hate on somebody who is delusional?
If somebody says the word transphobe or transphobic, you usually think of somebody hating trans people, and that's just stupid, because I don't see any reason why I would need to hate on somebody for being delusional.
So, like, according to Poncho, not me, YouTube, I ain't no transphobe, I am a she/her, a woman of color.
Yeah, I know the bit you're trying to do here, and it doesn't work for a variety of reasons. Even ignoring the fact that you claim to be trans, which I'm pretty sure is a joke, but even assuming it's not, that wouldn't be the defense you seem to think it is, because there have been transgender people who have been criticized for holding transphobic views. Blair White and Buck Angel come to mind. But also, the main reason why anybody and everybody can see through this transparent attempt at pretending you don't hold views you actually hold is, well, why would you bring this up in the first place if you didn't actually believe it?
And then we have the majority of transgender representation. Pandering, poorly written, played up for jokes in a harmful way, or just shoehorned in.
Yeah, that's right, you guys. You can't make fun of trans people or gay people or joke about them at all because, you know, they are a protected class.
That's not what she said. She specifically said they were played up for jokes in a harmful way. The implication being that if you are doing transgender-related comedy in a way that is not harmful, she wouldn't take issue with it.
But you can make fun of straight people as much as you want.
She never said that.
And like, really, using a Family Guy clip for your example of all things. You're using transgender as a way for playing up, what for jokes or whatever? Like, are you dense? Family Guy is a comedy. No shit, they're going to play something up for jokes.
So the example she gave was entirely accurate then? I don't even get what your criticism is supposed to be here.
I just hate modern day society though, where like every person under the sun needs to be represented in media. Like, who the fuck cares?
This video isn't arguing for representation though, it's talking about already existing examples of transgender representation. So saying that she's claiming that transgender people need to be represented just doesn't make any sense.
Transgender character in a video game starts in 1988 with the American version of Super Mario Bros. 2. It's a commonly known story today, but to catch everyone up, when Nintendo was developing Mario 2 in Japan, Nintendo of America decided the game was too hard and frustrating for an American market. So Nintendo of America took a Japanese exclusive game, Doki Doki Panic, and gave it a Mario themed coat of paint, and released it in stores. That means a lot of the enemies for Doki Doki Panic had become Mario enemies, with many of them sticking for good. Like the Shy Guy. Yeah, they started out in this game. They're not officially transgender representation, but god damn it, they're NB in my book.
I don't get how Shy Guys are transgender or unofficially transgender. Like, it almost seems like you just want to shove LGBT politics into video games. What happened to video games being a escape into like another world? Why the fuck do I need to see and hear about modern day real life problems and politics in video games?
Said modern day problem being transgender and non-binary people existing, I guess. I don't even know how to respond to that. Also, that was an obvious joke on her part, just for the record, that you took completely seriously, making your pseudo-defense of Family Guy from earlier, by the way, incredibly hypocritical, given your criticism there was that she's taking jokes seriously, I think. It wasn't explained the slightest. And now you are quite literally doing that.
But another character absolutely iconic to this game would be Birdo. She's a boss character in this game.
I mean, I wouldn't really call her a boss character, more like a mini boss maybe, so yeah.
Basically, she'll shoot eggs out of her mouth, and you'll have to land on them and then throw them back at her. However, for details about her being transgender, you have to check the manual for the game. Birdo's entry in the enemies section of the manual goes as follows. He thinks he is a girl, and he spits eggs from his mouth. He'd rather be called Birdetta. Jesus Christ, poor Birdetta. Yeah, this is gonna be a trend from here on out. Trans representation being played up for laughs.
He thinks he is a girl and spits eggs from his mouth. He'd rather be called Birdetta. Like, I don't know, man. I mean, woman. Trying to be trans-inclusive here to my fellow sister.
Like, real talk.
But yeah, that doesn't mean Birdo is trans, like, at all.
Never mind that these are common derogatory stereotypes used against transgender people.
At this point, anybody can think they are the other sex, and what? Now they are trans?
Yes.
That's not how it fucking works. You actually need to get the surgery and all that other shit before you become transgender.
Especially if you're a cartoon bird from a video game, apparently.
I understand this was a different time. 1988 was a far less accepting time, but I don't really care. It was wrong then, just like it's wrong today.
Bro, like, what are you even getting offended at this point? Nintendo being transphobes in the 80s? You're getting offended over a literal manual from a game that's like almost 40 years old at this point, saying something as tame as he thinks he is a girl and he spits eggs from his mouth, he'd rather be called Birdetta? Like, Really.
You and I apparently have rather different definitions of offended, given all I saw her do was neutrally describe this instruction manual before editorializing by saying that although it was a different time, she still doesn't particularly like it. Is expressing dislike for something your definition of offended now?
You're getting this butthurt over that. Like, this is a new low of patheticness. Is that a word? I don't fucking know. Maybe I'm just stupid.
Yes. Okay, I'll stop.
But seriously, this is 100% the type of person who would have a mental breakdown, freak out in a Walmart when she is in the checkout line and the cashier is like, will this be everything for you, sir? And she is like, it's ma'am.
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
The cashier is like, oh, sorry, sir. Can you calm down a little bit? Like, you're causing a scene right now. And then Melanie is like, God damn it, call me sir one more time and I'll show you a fucking sir. Then assaults the poor innocent Walmart worker trying to just do her job for a minimum wage, putting up with retard customers all day, and is just trying to feed her children.
I just have to admire how oddly specific that example was. Most people would only make a mountain out of a molehill. You made Mount Kilimanjaro out of a molehill.
In 2004, Nintendo finally had a chance to redeem themselves after the problems with Birdo in 1988. Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door features the character Vivian. In the Western release of the game, her sisters will joke about her being ugly and the least desirable of the three sisters. But nothing to really indicate anything funky going on with her gender. That is, until we get to the Japanese release of the game. Gotta love Japan's transphobia, woohoo!
I'm playing a woodwind instrument. I'm Japanese.
Wow, different cultures have different beliefs and morals? Woohoo! Imagine being so ignorant and close-minded you have the nerve to call the Japanese transphobes because they don't support your ideology. Crazy how far we have fallen as a society.
I mean, if that ideology is transphobia is bad and you don't support it, then yeah, by definition, you're transphobic. I don't know what you're going for here, I have to be honest.
Poor Vivian. And sadly, unlike Birdo, Vivian hasn't really made any appearances since then to really help mitigate these issues. What a shame. This one, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of sad to me because it just feels really realistic. You know, being chastised so heavily by your own family and flesh and blood.
Is that really true though? Like, I'm being dead serious. With all the support the Rainbow Mafia receives and how they are treated as a war veteran for coming out of the closet, are trans people really getting that much hate?
Well, let's read some numbers, why don't we? Nearly 40% of LGBT people report that they were rejected by their friends or family because of their identity. 41% of Americans say they would be upset if their child came out as transgender to them. 8% of transgender people have reported being kicked out of their house because of their gender identity, and 10% report experiencing violence from family members for the same reason. Fuck, I've met transgender people who have either experienced family rejection because of their gender identity, or who have had to hide their gender identity because of fear of family rejection. I don't know what the fuck you're going on about is my point. Anyway, final thoughts. It's somebody getting angry over a video because they thought it made points it didn't actually make. I don't know what else to say. Good night and good luck. Warning, this commentary contains mentions of the following people who some might not want to hear about. Viewer discretion is advised. I have been sitting on my points against this video for about 8 months at time of recording, primarily because of reasons that the person I'm covering had absolutely nothing to do with, so I will not be getting into them here. The video in question is Raven's commentary on TTC2, one that she has disowned but has nonetheless given me permission to express my issues with, which I will be doing. Also, to stop things from getting confusing, I'm going to be using this video of one of Toganium's backgrounds with a picture of Toka from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 over it as my avatar for this commentary. I'll also be skipping Raven's intro sketch, minus this part because I just want to point out that she has figured out the formula for great Star Wars dialogue.
Something something content, something something channel dormant, something something the first video of 2023 for you.
Something dark side. Something complete.
Oh yeah, this is a self-co-op where Raven co-ops with Jane, played by Raven. Credit where it's due, this is one of the better examples I've seen of this done within the community, to the point where my only real issue is I just don't really feel like there's enough of a distinction between Raven and Jane. It's a tad hard to explain, but there were never any points Jane made where I felt that was such a Jane point. Only Jane could say that. Raven would have never made that point, even though in this universe they're supposed to be different people, although I guess technically Jane's a robot, but you know what I mean, coming at this video with different perspectives. They should be at the very least phrasing things more differently than they are, although that's also something you just get a handle for as time goes on, so I don't really hold it against Raven for not doing it perfectly on what I'm near certain is her first attempt. With that said, if I do have to critique something production-wise about this video, well, I really don't like the way Raven goes about post points. Mind you, I already kinda find post points annoying, but that's very much just a me thing, so I don't really hold it against commentators. However, not only does Raven do several of them throughout this video, but she also completely changes how she delivers points when she does them. Almost certainly because these post points are not scripted while her regular interjections are. And this does nothing more than break the flow of the video in an honestly rather jarring manner. However, let's get into Raven's arguments.
Okay, so before we start, I know next to nothing about this dude outside of what I've heard from Ephrom and a few other commentators that have been mentioned in passing. With that said, I only have a handful of issues with the video in question, so while I'm gonna be blunt as hell, I don't hate the dude, nor do I have a malicious intent towards him, so take a lot with what I say with a grain of salt. We good? Alright.
Is this going to look bad for him? Probably, given what I'll bring up in my final thoughts.
And that was 3 different audio levels over the course of that clip. Yeah, fair warning, the audio balancing in this commentary isn't the best. I will be mitigating this as much as possible, though.
Alright, if we're gonna start a new year, we need to do it right.
And without a background for some reason.
Hey, quick question for you, Ephrom. How does not having a background in a cold open in a commentary not work in Key's favor exactly?
Because I don't think it looks good. I'll grant you, looking back, I should have explained that more, and even then this is rather nitpicky, but it doesn't work in his favor because I think it looks bad. Was that not obvious? Raven goes on to play a bunch of different commentators, including Keyblade Master in a previous video of his, Master TP10, Ponder Sprocket, and Umbrus, all doing this same thing, that being having no background in their cold opens. Now, first off, this point goes on for 2 minutes straight, which isn't inherently an issue, although there were certainly ways you could have made the same point without playing these clips in their entirety. A screenshot of the video with the time code present to prove it was the opening would have sufficed, in my opinion. However, that doesn't bother me as much as the fact that, to be blunt, I just have no idea what your point is here. So, other commentators have done this, therefore I shouldn't criticize it, it's fine. I think that's what you mean, but that doesn't make any sense. What if I also don't like it when these other commentators do it? It feels like you're just randomly bringing up these examples to make your point when, honestly, they serve no real connection to what's being discussed. I mean, nowhere did I say Key was the only person to have ever done this throughout the history of commentaries. I just said I didn't like him doing this.
Moral of the story is, when talking about cold openings like this, it's best to keep the discussion at the execution and not the concept itself.
The concept of what exactly? Not having a background during your cold opening? I'm so fucking confused right now.
And I know just the method to do so. Box of commentaries, give me something good.
You crazy? We'll take the boat.
No, not so fast, Lois. A boat's a boat, but the mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat. You know how much we've wanted one of those.
Then let's just...
We'll take the box.
Was that media clip really necessary? Realistically, you could make the same joke here, but with your own words. I get that media clips were often frowned upon back in the early days of the sideshow commentary community, but as we've established before, it's about the execution and not the concept. In this case, using media clips, especially for jokes, can really feel like a double-edged sword as shown here.
A double-edged sword? How exactly? What? What's the good way to use them? And there must be a good way, given double-edged sword quite literally means something that has both good and bad consequences. And how does my use of that Family Guy clip not fall into that category? If you had just said you didn't like it because it was pointless or something along those lines, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I would agree with that. However, I would at the very least understand your entire point. Well, here, I just don't.
Before we begin, I just want to give a shout out to Ephrommentator for helping me see if this video was recovering. Now, you link in the show down below. He doesn't need the commentaries.
Well, at least we know who to blame for this commentary being the thing.
Oh, so you want to start hating already? I can play, but that's the least of this point problems. Ephrom, you go ahead and explain this one. I'm gonna go try to fix myself.
You see, I'm not so much bothered by that shot at me as I am the fact that he decided to make it now. For those who don't know, I just had to deal with people assuming I was responsible for Jeff's video on Boonslayer. Although, at least in that case, I was friends with Jeff and had already expressed a distaste for Boon's video. Meanwhile, I barely knew anything about Sonic King at the time, and had never seen the IGN review in question before he sent it to me. Oh yeah, Sonic King literally showed a screenshot of him sending me the video and asking me if it was good in the video you're covering right now. Either way, keep it classy, Key.
Never once has Key accused you of doing anything like that.
When did I claim this was serious? I did say I didn't think the joke made any sense, but the first word I used to describe what Key said was shot, therefore implying I knew it was little more than an attempt at humor, which I then criticized for being both nonsensical and in bad taste, given what I had just went through.
At most, it was just a jab that shouldn't have been made in the first place, given Key's history with you.
And what was Key communicating with that jab? What was Key using humor to express towards his audience? You seem to be leaving that part out, even though that is the basis of what I am criticizing. As I said in that interjection, I am not bothered by Key mocking me, I'm bothered by him making that specific jab at me when he did, because I felt like it was in bad taste.
I believe Jane has a bigger issue with this, so Jane, you can take the floor.
Thank you, Master Raven.
I am going to make a point. Okay, now that I've made a point, I will let my co-partner continue to make some more point while I sit in the corner and piss my pants.
Let me ask you this, Ephrom. Would anyone watching this video know about the situation with people assuming you were responsible for Jeff's response to Boonslayer?
Let me ask you a question, Jane. Why does that matter? Why would it matter if everybody knew about it? Fuck, it wouldn't even really matter if Key knew about that specific situation or not, because all I'm saying is one particular joke he made was in bad taste, I thought, due to a recent situation. That could have been entirely on accident. I'll gladly admit that.
If not, then why are you bringing this up?
To explain why I didn't like Key's jab at me. What kind of criteria even is this exactly?
I get that you and Destroyer didn't like the joke, but mentioning this out of nowhere when Key's video had nothing to do with Jess or Boone is completely shoehorned in at best and vindictive and spiteful at worst.
What do you mean by out of nowhere exactly? I didn't bring it up for no reason after all. I brought it up because, again, it provided the context as to why I did not like Key's joke. And it's the same thing with you saying this was shoehorned in, because it wasn't. I said I did not like Key, I'll grant you jokingly, saying that I was responsible for Sonic King's video because it mirrored a real misunderstanding that had just occurred in the community. The two events were completely connected. I don't get your point here. I'm sorry, I just don't. I will now be skipping the rest of this interjection, minus this part of Raven's post point. Just so you all know, the post point is primarily Raven attempting to make a wider point about how I do weird comparisons. But that's the only context you really need.
Like, my guy, it was just a joke.
When did I deny it was a joke? That's the thing that really gets me here. I never once claimed it wasn't just for the sake of comedy, just that I felt like it was in bad taste. That's it.
You're making a mountain out of an anthill.
Can I ask you a question, Raven? Why is it making a mountain out of an anthill if I say that I find Key's jab at me in bad taste, but not if you spend nearly 2 minutes criticizing my criticism of that jab? All while under the impression I thought this was a serious accusation on Key's part, I think, and not just a joke I felt like it wasn't quite the right time for.
And it's also happened later on in the video where he just shoehorns in Sylveon and Sherman as examples with little to no explanation when talking about harassment.
You just mentioned why they were brought up, though. I was talking about harassment and using them as examples.
So I think everyone knows about IGN and their awful review of Sonic Unleashed. You see, I'd love to rip that apart, but many others have already done that, and I figured I'd try to stick out from the crowd. So today, I'm going to cover IGN Sonic and the Black Knight review.
Okay, a couple of issues with that. As to begin with the most glaring issue, your audio is mono.
I just want to address this real quick by saying that very well might have been what Key meant, but that's not what he said. He never once mentioned the audio panning at any point in his interjection. Instead, he just talked about the audio being mono. The problem is, those aren't quite the same thing. Mono audio is just sound that comes out of one channel. However, a single audio channel doesn't have to be panned to the left nor right. Hell, I even found an article specifically about how to pan mono audio without turning it into a stereo track.
Which I'm not sure what editing/recording software you're using, but I know there are workarounds to this issue, like going into your recording software, copying the track, then making one track go to the left channel and the other to the right before merging them into a stereo track. And for editing softwares, in most editors, they have a function that easily enables you to place the audio in one channel into the other. So either way, you really need to fix this issue.
Honestly, I'm unsure as to what difference it would actually make. Fuck, when I googled mono versus stereo to make sure I understood, the first result I got read, your preference for either one is entirely based on you, because just like sound, everyone is different. What if Sonic King just prefers mono sound over stereo, which is perfectly possible? For that matter, how would changing the audio make the video better, even in your opinion? You don't explain, you just treat this being an issue as if it's self-evident when, I'm sorry, it's really not.
Have you ever watched YouTube videos with headphones before? How about listening to music? The main difference between mono and stereo audio is that mono audio comes from one singular audio channel that has all the files smushed in one singular line. It objectively sounds like Sonic King's voice is only coming from one plane in a straight 2D line towards the right ear where it is panned.
But that's not an issue with mono audio, that's poor mixing on Sonic King's part, which is a different thing entirely. The audio wavelength you show isn't even what mono audio looks like when put into Vegas. It is just a stereo track where one channel is muted. This is what mono audio looks like in Vegas for those who don't know. I'm going to be skipping the rest of Raven's interjection because although she does do a good job at explaining the problem with Sonic King's audio, it doesn't actually refute my point that Key didn't do a good job explaining.
Okay, but why though? Since the only videos I could find talking about this review are from 2011 to 2012.
Well, then you and I must be looking in very different places because I just YouTube searched Sonic Unleashed IGN review and found a video from 5 months ago.
That's a reaction video and not a commentary.
Which is completely irrelevant given neither Sonic King nor Key made it clear they were talking about commentaries specifically, but instead were referring to videos in general.
But I guess that serves as a counter-argument to what he was saying somewhat.
So, a video from 2 months ago.
That's a speed run.
Over audio of the IGN review, making it, again, a video on said topic.
There's one thing you should know about Sonic Unleashed before spending your hard-earned money on it. It's a big piece of garbage. Big piece of garbage. That should probably be enough to warn off anybody who's thinking about playing it, but I guess we should talk a little bit more about it, just in case you like to hear this tortured sound of my voice. Indeed, it's games like this that make reviewers rethink their lives.
Yeah, Raven goes through every example I give in TTC2, criticizing the majority of them for not being commentaries specifically, even though, as I've already established, that's a qualifier that neither Sonic King nor Keyblade brought up in their videos. The only other thing to really note is, you admit this was poor wording on Key's part shortly after the interjection. However, if I came to the conclusion I did based off of Key's wording being bad, then what the fuck is the issue on my part exactly? I'll even admit it's not particularly unreasonable to assume that Key meant commentary specifically, especially given, as you point out, his examples were commentaries. However, again, that's not what Key said. He said something very different.
With most other arguments amounting to,
You so did that on purpose.
I do have to give you that, Key. This was the only argument made in that video, primarily because it was a 1 minute long one-shot.
So he has a point. Alright, that's fair. However, if we're going by school logic, he's failing still. Oh god, school.
Also, what if that was the only issue with the review? Again, hence why the video you sampled of somebody pointing that out was a one-shot. Under those circumstances, Sonic King would be right to say that everything that has been covered in the review got covered, because the only issue in it has been pointed out.
Must I bring what Ephraim's examples talk about to his attention?
I'm going to be fast-forwarding through these examples for reasons you'll see in just a second. The most you need to know is, well, exactly what Raven says after this, because she is nice enough to explain it to us.
Literally all these examples talk about the same point that was brought up in that one shot, so that's why I showed these clips.
But that doesn't disprove what I said. I brought up the possibility of what Sester brought up in his old one-shot being the only thing that could be pointed out in that review, therefore making Sonic King's statement that everything which could be pointed out was pointed out completely correct, and you respond by showing a bunch of people pointing out the same thing? That doesn't prove me wrong. If anything, that adds to my argument, not debunks it.
Where was I? Oh yeah, there's also looking at the review retroactively.
I think you mean retrospectively. Retroactively means taking effect from a date in the past, and I have no idea how you would apply that to commentaries. Okay, I'm going to make this short, but to begin with, Raven spends almost 38 seconds attempting to prove me wrong here, only to do a post point where she admits that I was right.
Well, yes, Ephraim is correct in saying that retrospectively is the better word choice than retroactively in terms of doing commentaries on old videos.
But I'm still worthy of criticism because I breathe pedantically or something. I don't fucking know.
The way he's going about it is just, I don't like it.
No, sir, I don't like it.
You can correct someone on what they're wrong about without being a condescending prick about it. There's correcting someone, and then there's being a condescending nerd emoji. We don't like condescending nerd emojis, ever.
And for the record, if you think I come across as arrogant or condescending in my commentaries, that's fine. But what bothers me here specifically is how obvious it is Raven didn't really have anything else to add, if that makes sense. Remember, she began this interjection attempting to prove me wrong, then admitted I wasn't wrong, then said that I was still bad because I sound smug or something. None of this is even getting into the fact that you don't really explain why this is the case, you just kind of say it. Nor do you actually explain why it makes the video worse upon thinking about it outside of you personally not liking it. Which, again, is fine, you have a right to that opinion, but that's all it is, an opinion. You don't explain any objective reason for this being bad, you just say you personally don't like it.
You're always at a dead stop fighting enemies, and it just happens endlessly. And these battles take place via waggle, not gestures, because gestures imply some sort of calculated measurement. None of that's going on here. There's no vertical or horizontal slicing, it's just shake, 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 and win, win, win.
First, see my previous point.
Because that point worked out so well the first time.
Second, a comment on your video actually called you out on this. Sonic has an entire moveset that depends on what direction you're pressing the analog stick, and what direction you swing the Wiimote. There's a stab, a tornado uppercut, a homing slice, and more. Even more so, you do actually unlock styles later in the game that are both speed and power oriented respectively, albeit it's very late in the game.
So ignoring how all of these claims have no evidence to support what they're saying, since that's been a running theme with your commentary, can I just point out how you're using a comment that was posted 3 years ago at the time of this recording when IGN's Sonic and the Black Knight review came out in 2009? Meaning that there's an 11-year gap between the video and the comment? Or in simple terms, this is a time traveler argument, which is the worst possible argument to make since this information wasn't present during the time this video was initially uploaded. Like, if you're gonna argue an old video, then keep the information around the same time point as the video.
Okay, Key, do you have any proof he's wrong? Because if not, what you just said is circumstantial at best, and that is really giving you the benefit of the doubt. Now, even if I were to play devil's advocate here and say he's wrong, you don't actually do anything to disprove this beyond throwing baseless words, which is not an argument in any degree.
I don't even know what the issue is here. Was there something that happened in those 11 years that would make the point valid when IGN made it, even if it is no longer? Because if not, then you're just pulling a non sequitur out of your ass in hopes it disproves Sonic King's argument.
Hey Jane, pop quiz. When did Key ever say that Sonic King was wrong in this interjection?
Nowhere?
Correcto! Congratulations, Jane, you win a free Entenmann's donut.
Oh, thank you, Master Raven.
You're welcome. Anyways, Key's point was that it's generally never a good idea to use evidence from after a past video was uploaded to disprove a point from said video. Thus, it could lead to someone using time travel arguments. Or as I can call this case, argumentum ad DeLorean. Trademark pending.
And Mayan Destroyer Shy's point was that not only did this not debunk what Sonic King said, but also this just didn't make any sense given this information was still available to the IGN reviewer when the game came out to our knowledge. You are right to say that it can lead to arguments which are dishonest given they use information that wasn't available to the person when the thing being covered was made. In this case, information about Sonic and the Black Knights that was not available in 2009. However, you still need to prove that's the case in order for an argument like that to hold water.
A much better point against this would be that the controls the comment was talking about were available in the game, it's just that the comment in question came a little too late.
Which is what I said, or more specifically, I asked Key to disprove that exact notion. I also want to point out that neither you nor Key actually explained the issue with using what Key dubbed time traveler arguments and what you call argumentum ad DeLorean. Okay, that's actually pretty clever, credit where it's due. Remember, Key's criticism was not that, for example, the comment Sonic King mentioned made reference to features that were not implemented in the game until after the video, but just that the comment came out after the video did. However, if the information is correct, then why does that matter if Sonic King chooses to synthesize that point into his commentary? Let me give everyone an example to really show what I mean. So I sometimes edit for the website Rational Wiki, a website which essentially acts as a sort of Wikipedia-esque debunking of various pseudoscientific and nonsensical ideas out there. However, in order to actually create a comprehensive debunking, you need to look at other debunkings and synthesize that information. To give just one example, the article on Ann Coulter's 2002 book, Slander, Liberal Lies About the American Right, which was written by yours truly, sees references to both a book from 2003 and a book from 2006, which were also highly critical of the work. And that's not even getting into the various times where we just haven't had the evidence to come to the right conclusion until after a hypothesis is formulated. Take, for example, this idea from Empedocles, who lived about 2,500 years ago, regarding the origin of humanity.
In his account, life first emerged as a bunch of disassociated body parts. The world was thus composed of crawling arms, legs walking around aimlessly, bouncing eyeballs, and disembodied butts. As time went on, these parts came together and attached to one another, creating fantastic creatures of random configuration. Some of these monsters had 10 arms, 30 eyes, and butts for heads, but those who were more suited to survival with more sensible combinations like 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 butt outcompeted all the Lovecraftian monstrosities.
Now that is not quite how evolution actually works. However, in order to explain why that's the case, I would have to use information, some of which was not discovered until over 2 millennia later. But that doesn't make this idea any more correct, even at the time it was first proposed. It was still wrong, we just didn't have the method to determine it was wrong back then. Now, don't get me wrong, I could understand if, say, I used modern information to debunk this idea and then called Empedocles over there dishonest or idiotic for believing this, because he wasn't. He was just ignorant. But I really don't see the issue with using more recent sources if they successfully debunk older claims, is my point.
Though I will give IGN credit for this. Unlike a certain someone I know, they are trying to make a living off of harassing someone.
Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down?
Oh boy, this is the big one. Okay, as I explained in the comment section, there are quite a number of flaws with this argument. But since we're in video form now, I'm going to elaborate further on the matter. Of the 4 you presented, that being the Birdman, X-Pred, Gyruff, and myself, only one of them is getting any money off this. And even if you want to argue that's not the point, 3 of them have more videos than anything on Tony Sonic. Let's start with me, for example. I have 72 videos as of right now. Out of 72, I have 4 commentaries, one of which is even covering Tony Sonic, and a 5th one on the way. A crap ton of shitposts that have nothing to do with anything, and everything right or wrong with video. So please tell me how in any way I am helping Tony Sonic, because I legit want to know. Now, if I was doing these weekly, like the Birdman and if somebody said Tony Sonic, you would have a point. But with that said, these are monthly, so you can't really use that as milking. Now, you could argue I'm kind of indirectly responsible for people getting on Tony Sonic, and you know what? I'm glad to take that being any day of the week. However, what you just said is such a blank statement, it's not even funny. Now, moving on to Shara, because believe it or not, this argument gets even stupider the more I go on. He only has 2 videos directly talking about Tony Sonic, one of which was using my script, so realistically, 1, if we're being completely honest, 1 on Chari, and many focusing on one of my ill videos. So the only real argument you could use here is that he knows some of my ill videos, but again, due to his poor wording, makes it sound like he knows Tony Sonic when he very much doesn't. This doesn't even go into the fact he doesn't even get anything out of this financially. As for X-Reds, he only has 123 videos, and of those, only 3 videos are on Tony Sonic and the rest don't even relate. And as I said before, he doesn't get any money off this. Do you not see how fucking stupid your overall argument is here? The only one who really works on this context is the Birdman, and even then, due to your own fucking logic, doesn't even cover Tony Sonic. In fact, Ephraim, you do the honors explain the rest of his points.
Raven, you still there? Yeah, she spends the next over 3 minutes playing an uninterrupted clip from TTC2 before proceeding to respond to the entire interjection, and I honestly don't get the point of doing such. It does nothing more than make the video monotonous, given we aren't actually hearing your commentary for a long period of time, and, well, that's what I'm watching the video to see. I'll give you I don't like how Sonic King used the word harass either, but you're going along with it honestly makes you know better. When people think of harassment, they think of the actions of people like Sherman or Sylveon, not just making videos of somebody a bunch of times. That might be obsessive, but that could not be considered harassment in any meaningful way. All of these people seem to do, even judging by your own statement, is have a repeat target, which, okay, a bunch of commentators have that. At what point does it become harassment? You don't say that. Instead, you just make an out-of-nowhere potshot at 4 people for, again, best as I can tell, having repeat targets. Oh, the horror.
Wait, lastly, you claim I harassed again. Okay, are you gonna present any fucking evidence to back this claim up? Because I remind you that I have my ill videos screenshot by several people before I send them out, so I can tell you for a fact that is grossly incorrect. And last I checked, nobody has taken issue with anything I've said, besides the moronic fanboys. The closest thing you can argue in my case is I'm blunt and hard. And yeah, that's absolutely correct. I'm not going to pretend that isn't the case. But I'm honest and very straightforward with what I say. And that's not game to the fact that his family attacked me first. Let's run down the list, shall we? I've been called a pedophile, a no-life, an idiot, a waste of space, and dogs have death threats in my family, and that's just scraping the surface. I could drag this video out for an hour going over every single goddamn detail if I really wanted to. But I'm not going to burn Ephraim's time, nobody audiences, but everyone can verify and even confirm these in my Discord. So yeah, I have absolutely every right to be harsh and blunt. So to answer your bullshit point, have I been harsh? Sure. Have I been overly angry at points? Yeah, you're right about that. But I'm gonna tell you this right now. I do not give a flying shit about what you say about me. I can take the punishment and then some. But you are not gonna sit there and lie about other people, especially targets that are much smaller than you. If you don't believe for Tony Sonic getting all the heat, fine. I don't fucking care. But you pull that little stunt and tell people such info about people I care about, wrong information makes me unbelievably angry. They already don't have shit from his fandom. I don't need you starting up shit too. Also, I love the fact that you said SK without context, but what you just did was way fucking worse. Look, you can say whatever you want about him without context. At least it was malicious intent. And on top of that, it's very minor compared to what you just did after doing basic fucking research. Like, hell, it took me several minutes to get this info, and I suck at this. So what the hell's your excuse?
Okay, so we're not going to touch on what happened the day after this video was uploaded because that is already a mess and a half that was likely resolved. Instead, we are going to focus on what is presented here. 2 of the 4 examples mentioned show that they have made 4 videos on Tony Sonic, which is a bit much taking into account how each of these videos came out within months or weeks of each other.
Okay, but how is something being a bit much harassment? I even acknowledge you can call this obsessive, but disagreed with the label of harassment, which Key put on to these 4 people.
Even if he was a repeat target, the execution has its cards stacked against it, especially when it gets taken too far.
How? And what is too far exactly? And have these people crossed that line? You're not actually making any point here.
Wait, Gene. Do you remember when Ephraim said that it was ironic for Key to call Sonic King out for making Tony Sonic a 4-time target when Key covered Neko Koda 4 times?
Oh yeah, that's a different case entirely, isn't it?
It actually is.
Do tell.
Well, for starters, the thing with Key covering Koda multiple times was in the span of, 5 years? Whereas Tony Sonic's coverage, at least as of recently from the examples presented here, have been in the span of a few months at most. At least with Key covering Koda, each of his videos on her were very much spaced out from each other.
Yeah, this is another case of you adding a qualifier that Key didn't and pretending like he did. Key didn't say Sonic King covered Tony Sonic this amount of times over this short of a time period. He just brought up the number of times Sonic King covered Tony and called it a day.
City boy!
It's also doubly ironic because guess who also covered Neko Koda 4 times? Yeah, kinda makes you think, doesn't it? I know hypocrisy doesn't make you wrong and shit, but couldn't you look at your own work before saying someone is doing a similar thing that someone else did?
City boy!
But I don't have an issue with somebody being covered multiple times. Key does though, and that hypocrisy was the subject of my original criticism.
Not to mention that Ephraim's examples of what he considers actual harassment don't help the conversation in any form. Hell, I'd say shoehorning the situations involving Sherman and Sylveon is grossly inappropriate since this isn't what the conversation was about to begin with. It was about how Key joked about Sonic King's wording and his point being so vague that the statement regarding making a living off of harassing someone can apply to literally anyone doing videos on anybody and anything.
Okay, we already covered how you don't really understand what shoehorning means, so I'm going to ignore that and instead ask, where the fuck did you get that impression? Sonic King made a reference to harassing somebody, Key showed various people, and somehow this was Sonic King saying that covering the same person multiple times is harassment? I don't get the connection! I don't even know how to address this point besides just saying that!
Thoughts. I do agree with most of your points. However, for replacing Avatar for no sort of reason, having a condescending take on a weaker channel that's running the ropes, and then lying about people harassing Tony Sonic is just a nail on the head. Hell, if I had known it better, it seemed like you're just a Tony Sonic fanboy that refused to acknowledge his mistakes. And pretty big ones, might I add. However, this video is not about Tony Sonic, so I'm not going to use that argument against you. But in the future, please use your wording more carefully, consider the person you're talking to at the source up to tone, and yes, I am very hypocritical this sounds, and put my counterpoint to that is this. I have covered someone who's been doing this for a year and a half, so he does not get a free fucking pass. So, next time, do some actual basic research before covering someone, because context is everything! With that said, thanks again for having me on it from. Oh yeah, here, get back to my original look.
You're welcome. My final thoughts are this. This video was shit. Although not all the points were terrible, Key constantly missed what the Sonic King was saying and would regularly just ignore sections of the IGN review in order to make his own points. It commonly came across like he just wasn't paying attention, if I'm gonna be blunt. Also, the shot at the end was just incredibly out of pocket, like what the fuck, dude? What the fuck?
Oh my! These final thoughts are more venom than I thought. Perhaps some music or maybe some comedy would be the antidote?
Why don't we wait on either of those until the video is over?
Alright then.
First and foremost, what Destroyer said about Key lying about 4 people when he was doing a jab is rather off base. Again, I agree that the joke would have been handled a lot better. On the contrary, however, Sonic King should have made himself clear on who or what he was talking about to begin with.
I just don't get this line of thinking. It basically comes down to, if these 4 people didn't want to be accused of harassment by Key, then Sonic King should have specifically said those 4 weren't engaging in harassment at the end of his original video. Or Key could have just not indirectly accused them of harassment. Why does Sonic King need to list every single person who isn't engaging in harassment for Key to not make such implications about these people? Also, Sonic King was obviously talking about Tony Sonic. You know, the person you and Key criticized him for because he focused too much on? He was making a reference to a previous target of his.
Ephrom? You're not using the phrase out of pocket correctly.
What does out of pocket mean?
It means you said or did something that could be seen as ridiculous or unacceptable.
Oh, so when you make inappropriate comments about anything at the wrong time, or say some really bad stuff, like call someone a slur.
Exactly.
Okay, how did I use that word wrong? Are you going to explain that?
Anyways, we're gonna end the video here. So, with all that said and done, the show is nearly over.
I guess not. Of fucking course. Good night, and good luck.